Perfect. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for day 2 of Scholars Portal Days, Collaborative Intelligence. If you joined us yesterday, thank you and welcome back. If today is your first day, welcome. We have a really exciting lineup again today. We're going to include some updates from Scholars Portal, an OCL update. We have a very exciting Scolaris logo reveal, and of course, the infamous pet parade. So thank you for joining us, and we're going to get started. A couple of housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, and the recordings will be posted to YouTube in the coming days or week or so after the event, and then that will be shared with you. The slides are available on SpotDocs. These slides will be added after, but any Lightning Talk presentations are already there, so you can follow along if you'd like. Captions are available as well. And in terms of conversation for the event, we have a couple different methods. In terms of chatting with fellow attendees, if you could please use the chat. You should all have access to speak with everyone, but you may need to change the drop-down menu to everyone, as the default might be hosts and panelists. So just take a moment to check for that so that you can engage in some conversations. If you have any questions for any of the speakers at any point, please use the Q&A module rather than the chat. This just helps us to keep track of questions so that we don't miss any or lose any in the discussion. And then you should be able to view all of those as well. Please be kind, considerate, and respectful throughout today's presentations and in your conversations. And if you want to follow along and sort of live tweet, or I think on Mastodon they're called toots, which is a little bit unfortunate. But if you want to post along on social media with us, our hashtag is SPDays24. So please feel free to do that as well. As we did yesterday, I do want to start with a land acknowledgement and acknowledge the land on which Scholars Portal operates and upon which most of Scholars Portal staff live and work. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting and gathering place is still the home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are very grateful to have the opportunity to work and gather together on this land. We encourage you to reflect on the land from which you're joining us today and to add your own acknowledgement in the chat if you would like. I believe there's a link to nativeland.ca, which we usually share in our events to help facilitate this. So I talked a bit about our agenda today, but here is sort of what you can expect. Again, the Scholars Portal update, we've broken it down into a couple different sections. So this will be spread throughout the event. We're going to begin with some updates, talking about some collaborative infrastructure and collections. We'll have some lightning talks, collaboration for research and impact, the Scolaris update and logo reveal, our most beloved pet parade during the break. Some more lightning talks specifically about enhancing Scholars Portal services, an OCL update, and then some final Scholars Portal updates with assessment and supporting collaboration. And we do have a little farewell tribute to some services and elements of services that we have said goodbye to recently. And then we'll close off with some closing remarks. But to begin with our Scholars Portal updates, I'm going to pass it over to Kate Davis, the director, to get us started.
All right. Thank you so much, Gabby, and thank you to everybody for coming to Scholars Portal Days. This is officially the biggest Scholars Portal Day we've ever had, with over 400 people registered, and I'm really excited that we have attendees from every Canadian province today. I think also a first. So the theme that we decided on for this year's Scholars Portal Days is collaborative intelligence, and we're highlighting both the developments in AI in our libraries and our continued investment in collaborative work. Yesterday, we had some great conversations about AI, and today we're really focusing on the collaborative aspects. So we have some good sessions today about collaborative projects and approaches, an update from OCL, and of course, lots of updates from Scholars Portal. Just first, a quick staffing note. As director, I'm thrilled that Jacqueline White Appleby and Harpinder Singh have accepted positions as associate directors of Scholars Portal. Both of them have been a vital part of Scholars Portal for a long, long time, and getting them into formal leadership roles really helps us solidify our entire team. I also want to welcome our newest member, Sarah Reeser. She's our new GIS analyst, and also Gabby, who you have heard from and corresponded with a lot in setting up Scholars Portal Days this year. She joined our team as a Scholars Portal librarian, I guess, last summer, and has been just such a terrific addition. So this is a transition time in a lot of ways for Scholars Portal. We're wrapping up some pretty intensive projects and saying goodbye to some long-standing services. Maybe our longest Scholars Portal first service, RACER. And that is freeing up staff capacity to focus on some exciting new projects and to tackle issues that we've been keeping on the back burner for a while. So today, I think what you see in these Scholars Portal updates are going to be some talk about new beginnings, and we're also going to be, as Gabby mentioned, celebrating some of those endings as well. You're going to hear from a number of Scholars Portal staff, all of whom are much better than I at talking about the projects that they're working on. And, you know, as always, I think their passion for what they do will really shine through. So before I pass the mic over to our first presenter, I'm just gonna ask all of you to sort of say a big thank you to our wonderful Scholars Portal team. And then we will have Julie Shi, our wonderful digital preservation librarian, talk to us about some of the work that she's been doing. All right, so thank you all, Scholars Portal, and I will sign off.
Thank you, Kate. And yes, we're going to move forward now to talk about our preservation services and then the Scholars GeoPortal, and we're going to start with Julie Shi. So I will stop sharing, Julie, so you can share your slides.
Great, thanks, Gabby. Go ahead and let me figure out which screen I need to share, as always. All right, I think that's sharing the right screen. Okay, thanks, Kate, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today for the second day of Scholars Portal Days. As Kate mentioned, my name is Julie Shi, and I am the Digital Preservation Librarian at Scholars Portal. And I'll be discussing some updates for the OLRC and permafrost. But before I dive into those, I just wanted to take a quick step back to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to digital preservation. So namely, what do we mean by digital preservation? So the digital preservation refers to the active management of digital objects to ensure our communities can continue to access, use, and understand these objects and their contents into the future. So that's a lot of words. But in practice, this looks like creating organizational policies and strategies for and in support of digital preservation and developing related procedures, workflows, and documentation. Resourcing is also key, and this includes sufficient staffing with enough capacity for the work, investing in training and skills development for those staff, and of course, everyone's favorite topic of funding. And last but not least, digital preservation relies on having the technical infrastructure, including systems, tools, and storage to support the work. And so here at Scholars Portal, we continue to develop our preservation services to help our members address some of these needs, particularly in technical infrastructure, workflow and documentation, and training and skills development. So with those definitions out of the way, let's move on to our services. So the Ontario Library Research Cloud was established in 2017 and provides secure, reliable, and scalable cloud storage to our member libraries and archives for storing and sharing digital material. The OLRC currently serves 21 members across Canada, and this past year we've been excited to welcome Trent University and MacEwan University on board. And the OLRC is supporting our members with preservation and backup storage, serving digital library and archival materials to end users for access, hosting static websites and online exhibits, and much more. So taking a closer look, the OLRC is a 5-node storage network with data centers hosted at academic libraries across Ontario. And this includes Guelph, Ottawa, Queens, Toronto, and York. And a big thank you to our partners for your continued collaboration. And zooming in further to the nuts and bolts, the OLRC is an object-based storage system built on the OpenStack Swift software. And it's designed to replicate files across 3 nodes for availability and to automatically perform fixity checks and self-repair. And the OLRC is also integrated with Jira Cloud to provide additional preservation management through independent fixity checks and the ability to store independent copies of your data with external storage providers that are used at your institution locally. So if it's not apparent, lots of copies in different locations with various storage providers and media types is a key strategy for digital preservation. In other words, lots of copies keep stuff safe, or in the world of data backups, there's the 3-2-1 rule. And members of the OLRC community have sought to put this into practice because while the OLRC does replicate data to 3 nodes for availability, these copies are not independent. So if one copy goes, all copies go. And so I'm excited to share that we are piloting a tape backup service to support members looking to mitigate risks to their digital assets further through geographic and technological diversity. But why would I ever want to do this, you might ask? So for data that changes frequently, a second copy of your data can be stored on tape as point-in-time snapshots, and these backups can then be used to restore data in the event that something unexpected or unwanted happens to the primary copy of your data. Backups to tape can also improve disaster preparedness for data that is static or that remains unchanged once it's been uploaded. And a tape backup creates an independent copy of that data on separate infrastructure that can be retained for long periods. So as a brief preview of what tape backup would actually look like, the process involves 2 steps and creates 3 independent copies of data on 2 media types in 2 locations, and tape storage is provisioned through the University of Toronto Libraries. So the first step sees data copied from the OLRC to local disk storage, as we have no way to copy data directly from the OLRC to tape. So that's the first copy created. And data is then backed up from disk to tape with 1 copy online and on-site for timely restores, and 1 copy in tape storage off-site and offline for disaster recovery. And if you'd like to know more about the pilot, please get in touch and we'd be happy to discuss further. And turning now to our hosted digital preservation service, Permafrost. Permafrost was established in 2018 to provide technical infrastructure to member organizations for the preservation of their unique library and archival collections. And today we're serving 18 members and supporting our community to preserve more than 5.8 terabytes of digital content across more than 3,030 archival packages. And Permafrost, of course, would not be the same without its community, and we've been delighted to welcome libraries and archives from Trent University, McMaster University, Toronto Metropolitan University, and MacEwan University to the fold this past year. In more detail, Permafrost takes care of installing, testing, maintaining, and upgrading our core technical infrastructure of Archivematica and the OLRC alongside selected integrations. And we bring these systems, tools, and storage together with training, workflows, and documentation, including a 12-week onboarding period, ongoing technical support, and extensive workflow documentation and related guidance. And through this, we hope to enable our members to focus on preparing and seeing their data through some variation of this very oversimplified processing workflow. And I'd be remiss to forget the people. Digital preservation work is work by people, and we've been working to provide avenues for our members to meet, share knowledge, and explore topics together. This includes community calls featuring lightning talks, presentations, and open discussions. And this past year, we've hosted 7 community calls on topics ranging from metadata and file formats, to workflows and automation, to working with Indigenous materials in the context of digital preservation. And this has included a presentation from the First Nations Information Governance Center introducing the OCAP principles. We've also introduced monthly office hours / working hours last October as a low stakes drop-in space for users to stop by as needs arise and capacity allows. We've also had 7 office hours since starting this initiative, and it's been a wonderful opportunity to troubleshoot together, hear about upcoming plans and projects, and to bring our conversations beyond our inboxes and dashboards into quote unquote real live spaces. And that's all from me for now. Thank you for your time. If you have comments, questions, or burning thoughts, as our friend on screen says, let's chitty chat. We'd love to hear from you, and you can reach us at cloud@scholarsportal.info to continue the conversation about the OLRC and our tape backup pilot, or permafrost@scholarsportal.info to chat about Permafrost. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand it over to Gabby.
Thank you, Julie. It's been a really exciting past year with lots of really wonderful developments for Permafrost and the OLRC. So thank you for sharing them with us. And we're going to move ahead to Alicia now, who's going to talk to us about the GeoPortal.
Sorry, struggling a bit to find the. Sorry about that. Can you see my slides?
We
Right
can, but
now.
we're on the last one from Julie's slides.
Okay, perfect. Then you should be able to see that.
Yes,
Good.
perfect.
Thank you for bearing with me.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Gabby said, my name's Alicia. I'm the metadata librarian at the GeoPortal. And today I'd like to share updates on 2 of our collaborative projects. The first is collaborative infrastructure, the GeoPortal Migration and Redevelopment Project, and the other is a collaborative collection, our historical topographic maps collection. It's an exciting year for both these projects, and I'm really excited to be here talking to you about it and anticipating what the next year is going to bring. As some of you know, the Migration and Redevelopment Project at GeoPortal is one that is happening after a relatively long period of intensive work and committed work by OCL members to reinvest in GeoPortal and find out ways and implement plans to do so. It started in 2020 with the reinvestment working group, and in 2021, this project gained approval from OCL to redevelop, upgrade, and refresh the GeoPortal. The business case working group in 2021 came up with a more detailed project plan with functional requirements that would make this initiative more concrete. And since then, the GeoPortal team has been planning, training, hiring new people, and scoping out how the implementation phase 2, would take place in the upcoming months. Last March, OCL sent an invitation, a call for group members to be a part of the new project working group. And we're happy to say that last week, we were able to decide on who our new members are going to be. So this new working group, the GeoPortal Redevelopment Working Group, will have a 2-year term, and its goal is to provide the Scholars Portal team with advice and support, community engagement, planning and implementation of the project. And you can see on the screen the people who've applied and are members of the group that will begin to convene in mid-June. But please stay tuned on news about that kickstarting meeting. As for the work in the next steps, the new project working group, as I said, will start around mid-June, and it will probably split up into smaller working groups tackling different aspects of the migration and redevelopment project, essentially with 2 main deliverables: to migrate all the metadata and data to a new Esri enterprise portal. That means upgrading the back end and the administrative layer so that the team will have more streamlined tools for their workflows and data loading. And this will also mean that we will have a faster, more capable backend system. But another project deliverable will be a brand new GeoPortal front end, catalog and map interface. And right now we're in the process of scoping out ways of designing that front end catalog. We will have new ways of searching and browsing collections, a better map display, and download functionalities. And we're very excited to see the group look at the work we've done so far and give us feedback and direction how to proceed. There are some other additional features that we would like to see in the new project. For example, support for large data downloads, an ArcGIS online integration with OCL institutional instances, for example, and would like to see more federated content, which means harvesting other collection metadata outside of OCL, outside of our infrastructure, as well as serving our metadata to larger Canadian infrastructures. Part of the project will also be the creation of new community training products, as well as end user documentation. So far to our collaborative infrastructure project. For the last bit, I'd like to talk a little bit about our collaborative collection, the 1 to 50K historical topomaps collection, which we've been developing since for a while already, since at least 2020, also as a continuation of a historical topomaps project in different scales at OCL that was started based on digitizing and georeferencing paper maps at McGill University, as some of you will know. And this has been an initiative by ACMLA and OCL with support from various partners to make historical topographic maps accessible online. To date, we have loaded 5,899 map sheets, which cover first edition Canada-wide urban areas, as well as all available sheets in Ontario and all editions. For this collection, and the updates that are coming, we've decided to make it the first test collection on the new GeoPortal. That means that with this collection, we will be testing how to create, we'll be testing new workflows. We will be trying out new data formats, new functionality, and ways of browsing this collection using interactive mosaics, for example, transparency layers, a time slider, time-lapse animations, and perhaps others. And we'll be testing this out in order to deliver around over 10,000 new sheets covering all of Canada, rural and urban areas. As you can see on the map, this is expanding our coverage significantly. The green areas are areas that we haven't yet loaded, but for which we do have available sheets, georeference sheets to load. And the black is here. The black is coverage that we already have on the current GeoPortal. So as you can see, it would be a vast expansion, and we are working on it as we speak. The new GeoPortal front end, we're hoping would give us additional ways of exploring this collection, including an ability to sort sheets by date and view them as a time slider, as well as an animated historical view for these sheets. So we are very excited to proceed with this work and look forward to engaging with the OCL community while we carry these two projects forward. So with that, I'll leave you back with Gabby and look forward to any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alicia. Yeah, it's really exciting to see the redevelopment project sort of taking off, and great to see the working group team put together and all the incredible work on the topos. The topos are always sort of in our top collections of the year. So it's really great to, yes, we're seeing lots of love for the topos in the chat as well. We are running a little bit early, and so we have plenty of time for questions. If anyone does have any questions for Alicia or for Julie about these two or three services, so we have the OLRC and permafrost. So if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the Q&A. That would be lovely. And then in a few minutes, we'll move on to our next round of lightning talks, which one of them, our first one, is going to sort of be in conjunction with some of the information that Alicia just gave us on the GeoPortal. Give another minute or two in case anyone has any questions. Oh, I have a question from Sabina, Alicia, is wondering if you can demo the time slider or if that's still a bit too new to demo.
Thank you for the question. It is still too new to demo. We've been testing with only a couple of sheets, and I don't have currently access to that demo. And also, we're still maybe for a fall update, we will be able to
Excellent.
give a demo.
Something to look forward to. So everyone who is here, be sure to tune in for fall updates in 5.5 months or whenever we do that webinar. We do have a question, I believe for Julie in the Q&A here from Chris Burns. How many libraries outside of Ontario have signed up with Permafrost? I just saw that MacEwan has recently joined.
Hi, Chris. I'm just checking our website to make sure I don't give you the wrong number. But at the moment, it is 2, the University of Alberta and MacEwan University, both in Alberta. But we are open, our doors are open for everyone outside of Alberta and Ontario as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, we can move forward to our lightning talks round. Okay. Let me pull my slides back up here. Okay, so we are going to move forward with our next session, which is going to be our first lightning talk session. And our moderator for this section is Jacqueline White-Appleby.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Jacqueline White-Appleby. I'm the Associate Director at Scholars Portal, and I'm delighted to be moderating these lightning talks today. The theme here is collaboration for research and impact. And our first lightning talk is a response will be forthcoming: geospatial information, provincially significant wetland boundaries, and the fight to protect wetlands in Ontario. And I'm delighted to turn it over to Francine and Laura Jean. Take it away.
Thank you very much. How's my sound?
Good.
Great.
Okay,
You sound
we'll
good.
start with that, and then we'll move to the screen sharing. All right.
And that looks great too.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Oh, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to present today about what I thought might be a forthcoming blog post, but actually it's my pleasure. I have the link to share with you today. I just have to navigate back to the Zoom window, which is always the challenging piece. Or maybe I'll just share it a little bit later when I've stopped sharing my screen to make it a little bit easier. So my name is Francine Barish, and I work as the Geospatial Data Librarian at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Kingston, Cataraqui, where the Cataraqui River meets and the St. Lawrence River meet Lake Ontario on the territories of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Today, I'll be providing some insider information and an overview of the research process for a recent blog post that Laura Cameron and I wrote for Niche, which is the Network in Canadian History and Environment, a Canadian-based confederation of researchers and educators who work at the intersection of nature and history. So Laura and I were writing this piece from the front lines of an ongoing Ontario Land Tribunal case in which the fate of part of the Greater Cataraqui Marsh provincially significant wetland is at stake. And our blog post describes the frustrating experience of seeking to find out, as concerned citizens, what provincially significant wetland boundaries had been changed, by how much, and by whom. So our story really underlines the critical importance of libraries and librarians, as well as repositories of geospatial information like the GeoPortal in the fight to protect wetlands in Ontario. So a little bit of important context before we dive in, some important terms. So the first one is PSW, a provincially significant wetland. It's a wetland that the province considers most valuable using a science-based ranking system called the Ontario Wetland Evaluation System, OEWS. And it's worth noting that since the passing of Ontario Premier Doug Ford's Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, which came into effect in January 2023, there's been an overhaul of the OEWS, and as a result, it's become increasingly difficult to protect wetlands in Ontario. And last but not least, the last important term, OLT, Ontario Land Tribunal, is a case impacting the fate of the part of the Greater Cataraqui Marsh. This was the impetus for this particular research question that led to writing this piece for Niche. And linked in the presentation that you have available to you, there's an incredible summary of the Ontario Land Tribunal as it relates to the specific hearing that pertains to this particular marsh, and I encourage folks to check it out. So just to give you a bit of an idea, I'm just showing you a 1924 oblique air photo, and this shows the particular area. I started learning about this area as part of my involvement in the Bell Park project. And as you can see in the foreground of this air photo, there's both a woolen mills and a tannery, and you can see the wetland in the background. So this is a site with a complicated history, and I really encourage you to check out the Bell Park project, which is a very interdisciplinary project that comes from a perspective of like film, cultural studies, and not necessarily what you would expect. But the research question came in as such, and sort of the problem statement was that data is available, current wetland data is available through the Ontario GeoHub. However, it only showed the current boundary. And Laura reached out to me with the question of noticing that there was an embedded date in the data, like of a timestamp, which declared that the data had actually been recently updated. And the question was, what did it look like before the change was made? Because essentially the current contemporary data superseded the historical data. So not only do Laura and I work together on the Bell Park project, Laura's also a library champion, a champion of arts and music in Kingston, and now a champion of wetlands. So my first thought was, why don't we just have a quick look in the GeoPortal? So you'll see some of the data that I pulled up from the GeoPortal. There was indeed information, and as Alicia mentioned, this tool is going to be redeveloped, and it's worth noting that the redevelopment will continue to support hosting this sort of information in the future. So we can continue to reference this for sort of historical time series slices of data that's hosted on these provincial portals. And what you'll notice is that we were able to export this data and use it to generate a map, which was used in the niche piece showing some of the changes in the boundary. So on the map on the right, you'll see there's a green striped area, and those are the pieces that we found through a comparison of the contemporary and historical data, which had been removed as parts of the provincially significant wetland. So the idea today was really to provide a little bit of insight into how this piece came about, and the title of the piece, A Response Will Be Forthcoming, was very much reflective of the process of trying to seek these data sets through publicly accessible means as concerned citizens. Not to say that getting them was impossible, but I think it's really important just to note how how important having the data already hosted is important to these particularly time-sensitive requests. And I'm really, really proud to be able to share this piece with you today. So I would also like to do a quick promotion of another beautifully written blog post by my co-author Laura Cameron. This is really a piece honoring the marsh as well. And you can see in this photo on the slide that you can see Laura holding cordage that's made from cattails from this marsh. And I think it's just the two pieces go really hand in hand, just in terms of the one reflecting the research process and highlighting the importance of libraries and librarians in these processes, but also just the things that researchers are capable of. And really, we're just a very small part of that. So I also want to promote this work and the work of the project as well. That's really all I have prepared for you. I just want to say thank you. And I hope I've left more than enough time for questions. And I've just put those QR codes up there. I added those to the presentation when I submitted it earlier this week. The piece wasn't actually out. So I'm happy to resubmit these to the folks at Scholars Portal so they can post a presentation with the updated links. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Francine. That's so interesting and prescient, and our thanks to Laura as well. A few folks have put the link to that blog post in the chat as well, and we'll get the updated slides from you. We're going to move on to the next lightning talk, but please, folks, put your questions in. Oh yeah, please put them in the Q&A box, and I expect we'll have a good amount of time to talk through that, because I'm sure there are folks who would like to know more. At this point, I'm going to move on to our next lightning talk, which is entitled ORCID Implementation. And we have with us today Mary Ochana, Laura Brettel, and Ian Milligan from the University of Waterloo. Thank you for being here, and over to you. Hi, Mary.
Hi there. Just a second, and I'll share my screen. So we're good on the screen?
It looks good.
Good. Perfect. Okay. So hi, I'm Mary Ochana. I'm the Research Intelligence Project Analyst at the University of Waterloo Library, and I'll be giving you some information about our ORCID implementation pilot program that we've started in January of this year. So to start, I just want to go over some project roles, because this project is being led by the library, but we are working with a lot of campus partners and stakeholders. Everyone's interested in research impact metadata. Where do we get it? Where do we put it once we have it? So Ian Milligan from our Office of Research is our project sponsor. Laura Brettel, the Bibliometrics and Research Impact Librarian, is our project owner. I am the project manager, and that's our core team. But we've been working very closely with graduate students and postdoctoral affairs, as this pilot is focused on PhD students and postdoctoral researchers. We've been working closely with our communications team, both from the library and from GSPA, to make sure our outreach is targeted and effective. We are working closely with our librarians, letting them know what we need from them for implementation, hopefully supporting them in the process as well. And then also with our user experience team, which we reached out to run focus groups that I'll discuss later on. And finally, we've connected with our institutional analysis and planning department at the university. So I'm just going to quickly go over our project summary. Why implement ORCID? So persistent identifiers increase the persistent discoverability and connectivity of researchers and their outputs. So with persistent identifiers, we can easily link our research outputs to our underlying data and associated metadata. This leads us to ORCID. ORCID is a persistent identifier for a person, or in this case, a researcher. So it provides a persistent identifier that the user owns and controls, but can be managed by the institution. So our goal for this pilot is to implement ORCID across the University of Waterloo's campus and assert affiliation, specifically, again, for PhD students and postdoctoral researchers. And in the process, we'll be identifying key workflows, technical considerations, stakeholder needs, limitations, and what our communication needs are. So for those of you who have never used ORCID before, It's an online platform. This is the layout. In the top left corner, each user is given a unique 16-digit identifier. So you're not bound by your email or your name when you're using an ORCID account. And you can put your employment history, education qualifications, and other scholarly works all on one profile. So there are plenty of benefits to this pilot. I'm going to limit myself to 2 points since it's a lightning talk, but specifically the first two under institutional benefits. Data can easily be linked with other systems and improvement of data workflows across the institution. So ORCID has many integrations, including in repositories. So the plan is to integrate ORCID into our institutional repository. And then as we implement across campus and create an accessible and integrated data set, we won't constantly be needing to rekey data as we share across different departments. So allowing us to have a easier and more collaborative efforts across campus. So as we've been planning our own implementation, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we've been contacting other institutions about their documentation, their process, whether they've had a successful ORCID integration or they are currently in the process of doing so. And we've established some great partnerships in this process. The first of which being Boston University. They've implemented ORCID to make their research, networking, and all aspects of their scholarly enterprise more effective and efficient. So they've found success in many things, but the most important one, or the one that stood out the most to us, is that they facilitating essential storage of ORCID IDs for members of the BU community. We've been in quite a bit of contact about that, which has been really helpful on our end. They've served as a resource for other organizations, including Harvard, Duke, and NYU, and now us. So that's been great. They've been sharing documentation and as well as source code. And our most recent connection has been SUNY, or the State University of New York. Their goal is to understand research impact across their 64 colleges and universities. So obviously they're working at a systems level and we're working at a campus level, so things are a bit different, but we've found quite a bit of success in connecting with them. They've shared their success in webinars, creating a strong knowledge base, and linking ORCID to existing initiatives. And we've connected quite a bit about what goes into their webinars, what has worked, and what they think is really necessary for a strong knowledge base. So as I said earlier, we did run some focus groups. We connected with our campus user experience group, and they wrote a full report on our users and what they like about ORCID and what they see benefits in. So that was really valuable to know that the benefit that our graduate students value the most is ensuring your work is recognized and maintaining all your key information in one place. They also referred to ORCID as an online CV quite a few times, which was helpful to know. It is, but it's not a wording I would have thought of on my own. And they also let us know what they wanted to see from us and what did they want to know about ORCID before going into a workshop or learning about it in one of their courses, specifically how ORCID compares to similar platforms. The one they brought up the most is Google Scholar, and it's helpful to note to them that yes, Google Scholar verifies researchers by verifying your institutional email, but what ORCID does is it verifies every publication, education, all of your scholarly works. So it's a more secure profile or a more verified profile overall. And then our next step right now is to go into our test groups. So we will be using we used our findings from the focus groups to create a communications plan and an outreach plan. So we're going to be testing out this plan on 20 to 40 participants. We will be focusing on the Faculty of Engineering. So we will be reaching out to both the Office of Engineering faculty members, but also academic support units, whether that's through the library, but then also graduate advisors as well, to make sure we're hitting our core population. And then this test group is meant to test out our landing page, our outreach strategy, and our data collection page. So hopefully we will establish data workflows and graduate students and postdoctoral researcher workflows. I think I am just under 7 minutes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Um,
All right, so we do have a number of questions that have come through. It looks like the ones we're starting with are for you, Mary. So Joanne is asking, are you getting any feedback from faculty or grad students on the data storage for ORCID? Are you looking at local ORCID servers? And how will you ensure affiliations are up to date?
I'm going to start with affiliation because that's on the top of my mind.
of
So
course.
we're using Affiliation Manager from ORCID, their tool. So we're both collecting recent data from GSPA, and then going into classrooms and running workshops where we're collecting our own data. Our landing page will have 2 options where you are either able to create a new ORCID ID by going through our institutional portal or submitting an existing ID. So we'll know how recent that was, and then we will use Affiliation Manager to update with where you can bulk upload data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I would imagine assuming more schools implement a program like this, as faculty and graduate students move around, the schools will have I assume, a workflow in place for bringing in new affiliations when folks already have ORCIDs, but they're linked elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Some institutions have workflows in place where they target new faculty members specifically. Once we move on to faculty members, we'll look more into that, but for now, just focusing on graduate students.
Thank you. The second question Joanne had was about data storage for ORCID. Is that something you're thinking about at all?
We're still writing up our data management plans, so I don't have a concrete answer about that, but
well, it sounds like we'd be curious.
Yeah.
Thank you. And our next question is from Mark at Queens. Hi, Mary. Have you used the ORCID Affiliation Manager yet? It sounds like yes. Is that on your roadmap for implementation? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So for those of you who have not used or heard of Affiliation Manager, ORCID members can be asked to accept trusted organizations. So the University of Waterloo would be a trusted organization. And what we would do with the Affiliation Manager is send out an email to all of our users or all of their ORCID accounts saying accept as a trusted organization. We will update your profile for you. And if they accept it, we can update their education publications, any scholarly works on their ORCID profile, and they can accept or deny these updates as well. But when they accept it, you get a little green check mark underneath that says source University of Waterloo. So it becomes a verified CD for you. And this permission can be taken away by the user at any time.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that functionality. That's awesome. Thank you. And Joanne says, this looks like a super plan. I can't wait to see the results. Yes, I think a lot of folks on this call are thinking about PIDs, working on PIDs at the CRCan level or locally. And so this was wonderful to hear. And we look forward to hearing what's next. We'll see if there are any other questions coming in for Mary or for Francine. Francine, perhaps your presentation was just a perfect little package and there were no loose ends left, or maybe we need to read the piece first. But if anybody has questions about Francine or anything else on PIDs as well for Mary, we would love to hear it. We'll give it a couple minutes. See, because we are well ahead of schedule, so that's kind of fun. If folks have even kind of exploratory questions, maybe we can try those out. I see no typing. Joanne did mention in the webinar chat as well that she was interested to hear about any plans for ORCID integration into Scolaris, which is the new shared repository solution that we're working on with Carl. And yes, Julia has responded. It's certainly something we're thinking about. We heard in the survey that we did with the working group loud and clear that integration with various PID providers was a really important part of that. So it's on the radar. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. Thank you so much, Mary and Francine. What a fun set of talks on collaboration for research, but for impact, right? These are incredibly impactful projects, and we're very lucky to get to hear about them. I'm going to turn it back to Gabby.
Sorry, Jacqueline, we have one that just popped into the Q&A. One more question.
Megan. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Francine, could you talk more about next steps for the project? Have you received any feedback from the blog post?
So I will say the niche post that came out yesterday, we haven't received a ton of feedback about it yet, although I'm I don't want to say anxiously awaiting, but because of the politicization of discussion around wetlands, I am anticipating questions.
Mhm.
In terms of the work of the Bell Park project, I think the response or in terms of next steps, I had the privilege of taking a research leave recently. So there will be some more content coming out through the Bell Park project that showcases map and air photo collections specifically,
Mhm.
and a film that showcases the transition of the wetland in the past 100 years using library air photo collection. So I'm very excited to share that. And I'm really looking forward to hearing it from any feedback that folks have. And I really appreciate the question. I think it's a project that really challenges our way of looking at this particular space, like not from you know, a biology or species lens, or there's a lot of development and encampments, unhoused folks that are present in the space. So there's a lot to discuss, and the project definitely can't possibly encompass all of it. So
Mhm.
I'm really interested to hear what folks have to say after having a little bit more time to check out the blog posts and the project itself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Well, everybody go take a read and then tell Francine what you think. We have one last question here from Cameron, which kind of ties these two presentations together quite nicely. Cameron is harkening back to Alan, our fearless leader for a very long time, who had talked at some point about, I guess, using the geoportal to map out researchers geographically, potentially tying it in with ORCID. Maybe we could see how researchers move across the country. I would, apropos of nothing, Mary or Francine, do you have any thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Mary, if you want to get started. I always have something to say.
You can go ahead first.
Is ORCID mappable?
Francine, honestly, you can go ahead first. I'm unsure where to start with this. I didn't think about it, to be honest.
For sure. I mean, I think the visualization of research networks is such a powerful tool. And I feel like it's finally being realized in a way, not necessarily through the geoportal, but there are tools now that exist to get a sense of how interconnected research is geographically. I have yet to see it on a map, although like I often have seen these like web diagrams, and I know there are definitely efforts to help visualize geospatial researcher data in some of the tools. I don't think it's been entirely actualized yet, although searching geographically has been, which I think is an incredibly powerful tool in itself. So it doesn't really answer your question, but I wonder if it's, I'm going to be part of the redevelopment. So I imagine there'll be some discussions whether or not it is in scope or not.
Cool. All right. Looking forward to it. All right. I think that kind of brings us to the end of our time and our session. Again, thank you so much, Mary and Francine, and I'm going to turn it back to Gabby.
Thank you very much, all of you. That was wonderful. And thank you for the questions, everybody. That was amazing. I do just want to do a quick reminder before we move forward. I'm seeing lots of like wonderful posts in the chat, but a few of them are going to hosts and panelists only. So for the sake of everyone seeing the wonderful conversations and not just us panelists and hosts, just take a moment if you can to check to make sure that the to in the drop-down menu in your chat option says everyone and not hosts and panelists, unless you want to send us a message privately, but I don't want anything to get lost. So just a quick reminder for that. And now I think we are going to move forward to our next section, which is our very exciting Scalaris section, which Julia Gilmore is going to talk about for us, including a logo reveal. So stay tuned for that.
Hello, can you see my slides here? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. So thanks, everyone. I am going to start with a little overview of digital publishing services and then get right into Scalaris, which is a very exciting topic of conversation these days and probably from all the days forward. So I wanted to first start by celebrating that this year marks the 10th anniversary of Scholars Portal hosting OJS and OMP instances for OCL schools. And in our first year, we worked with 5 members to host a total of 80 open access journals. But today, we're really proud to be able to provide a sustainable service model that delivers infrastructure and support for 13 member libraries. So with those member libraries, we're currently hosting close to 300 active journals. So that's up quite a bit. And over 80,000 published articles. So the support that we offer through this service includes software hosting, performing troubleshooting and upgrades, and offering sponsorship to OCL schools for minting DOIs through Crossref, being a Crossref sponsoring affiliate. So we are always delighted to see the number of members joining and the number of journals and articles being published each year growing exponentially. And as our digital publishing services sort of hum along, roll along merrily, we're also really excited that this year we'll be expanding our offerings in this area with the development of a new national shared repository service, which is called Scalaris. Okay, so I said this year, but really there's been a lot of years and a lot of work that's been done over these many years and some really important contributions that have taken us to this place where we're able to really get to work developing this service. So I wanted to first mention that there was the OCL Shared Repository Infrastructure Working Group, as well as the CARL Shared Repository Infrastructure Advisory Committee, or SIRIAC. And both of these organizations were separately looking at the feasibility of shared repository infrastructure with their members over the past few years. So there was a lot of great work in this area. There were many of you may have participated in these surveys and interviews with staff at OCL libraries, repository managers across the country as well. Both OCL and CARL investigated various types of repository software and service models, doing an environmental scan of other shared repository models, both in Canada and more broadly internationally. And really all of this work was able to provide a really clear and current picture of the repository landscape. And from this work, we also saw that there was a strong interest from repository managers and sort of the repository community in Canada to really develop shared repository infrastructure. And part of the excitement for developing this infrastructure were that there were a number of really exciting opportunities that were identified for a model like this. So some of that looks like the ability of a shared service model to support interoperability among repositories, to support repository managers, which can sometimes be a one person or sort of under-resourced area, to really provide access to shared governance and communities of practice, both technical and community support, to identify and improve consistencies. So something like working towards a shared metadata model, not just for migration, but also for controlled vocabulary, discoverability, search. So there's some really great opportunities for consistency across our repositories nationally. There's opportunities for integrations. One of the things with having one repository platform with DSpace is that with these different instances, there's a consistent UX experience, user experience across the repositories. There's also opportunities to look at storage and preservation and sort of best practices for preservation and possible integration with Scholars Portal storage and preservation services. And also to bring our repositories together into alignment with really exciting national and international efforts that are already underway. So the National PID strategy, for example, there is the CARL Open Air Task Force, which is putting together guidelines for discoverability. There were the recently released core framework as well for controlled vocabulary terms. So there's a lot of opportunities to kind of have these conversations together with repository managers and sort of the repository community across the country through our service, but to also liaise with different organizations that are working together in this area. So as Oakle and Carl, we're looking into all of these kind of components and identifying sort of the opportunities and also some of the challenges and things to be aware of. There was also the recommendation in terms of a service provider that Scholars Portal does have quite a significant track record as a technical service provider. And this includes experience hosting centralized infrastructure, our recent successes taking several of our services national, which we've covered a few times before, but these were also identified by various stakeholders. Something that was also brought up was the development, the recent development of a shared governance model for Borealis as sort of a model that we could look to implement for Scolaris. And then also the expansion of the journal's TDR, which is going national for CRKN members. All of those sort of developments made us a natural candidate to develop, host, and manage the service. So that was a recommendation from the work that had been done already. And then both Oakle and Carl, in investigating which type of platform we could run this service on, the recommendation came to use DSpace, which is an open source repository platform. It's software that's already in use by many repositories in Canada. We like that it's open source. It's something we always like at Scholars Portal, and it's important to us as well. There's a number of different integrations and a lot of support built in for integrations and customizations. There's a lot of documentation and also a very active open source community with DSpace that we have opportunities to learn from as we build out this model, but also to be able to contribute back to that community was something that was also identified as an important part of this work. So out of, in particular, the Oakle working groups report, there's a recommendation to start this work with a small group of pilot schools. And so we did this beginning last summer, working with two enthusiastic and intrepid Oakle members that stepped up to the plate, Ontario Tech and the University of Toronto. And so we've been working with both of those schools with their teams to migrate their existing DSpace repositories to the latest version, which is DSpace 7.6. Okay, so the Oakle and Carl projects were really happening in parallel, but they came together in November of last year when Carl, Oakle, and the University of Toronto Libraries signed an MOU, which you may have seen go out. It's quite a thrilling day. And the intention with that MOU is to develop a national institutional repository service that would be hosted by Scholars Portal. So the three main areas that were identified in the MOU for this partnership were to run a pilot program. So we have the work with our pilot schools, but I'll also talk a little bit more about the evolution of that to the early adopters program that we're now just at the beginning of implementing. Another area for this partnership was developing a governance and financial model, and then establishing a network of experts and working groups to really provide key recommendations and informed decision-making for the service development. And I'll also talk about what that community of experts looks like in a few slides from now. But in terms of responsibilities for this work, Scholars Portal is leading the early adopters program. Obviously, we're investigating the technical infrastructure as well. And then Carl is taking the lead on governance development and coordinating the Scolaris expert groups. So that's a bit of background of how the service sort of has come together, but we know that there are a lot of questions about what this is actually going to look like in practice, what the model will look like for Scolaris, and hopefully I can provide some clarification for that today, with the caveat that there is still a lot of development that we need to do in order to be able to answer exactly what this service is going to look like. But one of the first things that I wanted to just sort of clarify is that Scolaris is really envisioned as a repository service and sort of a hosting solution, but it's not intended to be this one single repository platform. It's not meant to replace all of the existing institutional repositories. And it's also not mandated that schools are going to need to join this service. So it's envisioned to be an opt-in service as well. And one of the reasons that it's not designed to be this sort of single federated platform that is unlike Borealis, for example, or Dataverse, is that DSpace currently doesn't support multi-tenancy, the multi-tenant model. So instead, what we're going to be doing is creating individual instances for each participating school. So while this is a different model from Borealis, it is similar to how we deliver our other digital publishing services. So OJS and OMP, as I mentioned earlier. So we have experience in centralized service delivery, and in particular, we have experience using Sync, which is an open source version of Chef, to be able to automate upgrades and streamline workflows so that we're not needing to manually roll out changes to each of these instances. So instead, these changes would be applied to a centralized code base, and then they're deployed to the instances. And so that's sort of the model and sort of the planned architecture for that, but we do have to see how this all works in terms of working with DSpace, which is a new platform for us, and looking at ways to make this as efficient as possible. But just to sort of cover over what the vision for the service is that there would be parallel instances with central hosting and management to allow for efficiencies with common integrations and improved functionality, while still allowing a degree of flexibility and autonomy at the institutional or local level. And this is really to accommodate feedback that we heard from schools, that there was really an interest in being able to still have some control over some of the repository elements, for example, the look and feel of their repository to retain their institutional branding. So we found that this model that we're trying out is hopefully going to provide a nice balance with those different needs and to allow for that efficiency as well. So we see this as an opportunity for Scolaris subscribers to enjoy kind of the best of both worlds, a local institutionally branded repository instance that is centrally managed and hosted, receives regular upgrades, maintenance, reporting, and troubleshooting. And then the service is also a way for repository managers to be able to tap into shared resources, documentation, and participate in Scolaris communities of practice. So two other questions we've been asked, well, we've been asked a lot of questions, but two of the ones that come up quite a bit are questions around what the types of customizations will look like and whether there'll be a discovery layer. So just to cover the first question quickly, which is to say that we don't know exactly what the sort of customizations or sort of permitted customizations or integrations are going to be, but what we're hoping to do is, with the input of our early adopters and working with the CARL expert groups, is to really explore both the feasibility and the desirability of customizations and integrations. So to get a sense of what makes sense for the repository community, and also what repository managers would like the service to be able to offer. So this means really getting a sense of what schools currently have set up, what types of customizations everyone is wanting to keep or to drop or looking to add. So the ORCID integration is a great example of this. And then where there are commonalities, so that we can kind of test out these different customizations and integrations and be able to determine and have more clarity around what that sort of Scalaris out of the box offering is going to be. And then we'll also be we're also already hard at work on what the workflow will look like for schools to be able to request certain changes as well. Any of the sort of changes to something like the core code base that we're envisioning would be put to the Scalaris community for discussion and to build consensus, and then that would be something that we could look into developing and adding to the service. But we wanted to just kind of mention this first because this migration that work that we're doing with our early adopters, it's not a requirement that you have to drop all the customizations that you currently have. It's really just working together with the community to get a sense of what customizations sort of make sense and where do they support interoperability and all of the sort of shared benefits of having a service like this. And then second, the discovery layer question. Yes, there is considerable interest in having a sort of discovery layer over top of the service that would allow for that federated search and discovery of content across repositories. And that's something that we are looking to develop in the future. It's not something that we're going to have in place anytime soon, but it is definitely a feature that we have added for some of our other services at Scholars Portal, and we would be looking to add to the Scalaris site in the future. And one of the other things that is nice about that discovery layer is that we could also build it to encompass non-Scalaris subscribers so that it really can be that true national discovery layer that is a portal to Canadian research, and subscription to Scalaris would not be required for that. So it's really about elevating Canadian research more broadly. And so I talked quite a bit about the technical infrastructure, but obviously, as with all of our Scholars Portal services, it's not just about the technical components. It's really about building the community infrastructure as well. And we really feel that our services work as well as they do because they are embraced by these really vibrant communities that use our services, provide suggestions, actively help to improve them, and contribute to documentation. So that's something that we are really excited to be able to do. It's something that we know has been really successful, and we receive a lot of compliments on that for other Scholars Portal services. Julie mentioned the community calls with Permafrost as one example. There's a lot of really great resources and documentation for all of our data communities as well, and data services. So this is something that we are looking to do through a number of different ways. So we have a lot of work to do with Scalaris. We're not developing this service on our own, and we're really looking to be supported by and take direction from the institutional repository community that has that experience with the repository landscape and particularly migration expertise as well. So this work in developing the services and the community infrastructure is about working with our early adopters and also with Carl's newly formed Scalaris expert groups who are providing specific input, recommendations, sharing knowledge, workflows, a whole host of really great resources for two key components of IRs. So there's one expert group for metadata and discovery that has come together and is starting to meet monthly, and then a second one for ETDs, so electronic theses and dissertations. And there are some short and medium and long-term goals, one of which is to really support early adopters through the migration and to assist us at Scholars Portal by identifying what we really need to be considering, addressing, and building into the service model. And I will say expert groups is a really accurate name. I'm lucky to be part of both of those groups, and there is just such a wonderful level of engagement and varied expertise and experiences, and particularly a really wide and varied amount of migration expertise from our group members who have migrated from many different repository platforms and have so many great resources to share. So we're really grateful to be able to learn from these participants. And we also wanted to mention that Scalaris early adopters also have the opportunity to join these groups as well. We're also working with Carl's visiting program officer, Gabriela Mercias from the University of Calgary, and we'll be working together to talk to our early adopters and hear about what the migration experience is like, to be able to develop a migration readiness checklist for future subscribers that are planning to join the service. So as I mentioned, there's a lot for us to learn here at Scholars Portal, but there's also very fortunately a lot of knowledgeable and passionate folks to be able to learn from. And we're really grateful for all of that feedback, enthusiasm, and patience as we're working to develop this service. So currently, I have mentioned the Early Adopters Program a few times. We do have the pilot participants that we're working at and working with, and we're excited to be able to move into launching their sites in early summer, moving into production for both of those schools. And then for the Early Adopters Program, some of you may have seen that there was a formal call that went out for participants for the program in March of this year. And that was the goal with the Early Adopters Program, is to work with a variety of institutions that have various migration needs, that have various repository experiences or sort of repository instances, to have representation across regional consortia, and then to have at least one institution in French. And so those were sort of the components that we were looking for with our participants, and we were thrilled that we had so many wonderful institutions who filled out the form and got in touch directly to express their interests. And so we've actually, we're thrilled to announce we've been able to fill all of the spots for our first 2 cohorts. So we'll be working in our first cohort this summer with institutions that have current DSpace repositories or are looking to set up a new repository. These institutions will have a French language component as well, which gives us an opportunity to really scope out what that bilingual service offering will be. And then we're also going to be working in the fall with the second cohort to look at migrating non-DSpace repositories. So there's a lot of different platforms. They all have different models of mapping over and performing the different sort of migration pieces of it. So that'll give us a lot to sort of work on and to iron out all of the sort of complexities of what migration to the new service will look like. So this is going to give us a great opportunity to sort of work on that recommended metadata model for being able to map items into DSpace and over to Scolaris. We're also working with those institutions who expressed interest, but which we couldn't accommodate in these first 2 cohorts, to add a third cohort beginning early next year. And there'll also be a formal call out for future cohorts in the coming months. So if you are interested, there will be a slide and a link in the chat shortly to share that interest with us, and we can directly contact you to hear more about how you'd like to participate in the service. So we have a lot of migrations and components to figure out over the coming months and years. We're really at the beginning of a lot of this development, and this Early Adopters Program is really a key piece for helping us define what this service model is going to look like and to clarify our service offerings. So we have a number of different outputs that we're looking to be able to create through the Early Adopters Program. One of which is to really define what the service is going to look like, to define what that migration workflow is going to look like. We get a lot of questions about that, and we really want to be able to provide the clarity on what that is going to look like, and as well as a cost estimation for ongoing service to make sure that this is an approachable and sustainable service model for institutions moving forward. So as I mentioned, if you have questions or you'd like to learn more about the program and what this service model looks like, or is sort of envisioned to look like, you can always reach out to our Scolaris team by emailing info@scolaris.ca. We may not have all the answers to your questions right now, but we really, really appreciate all of the questions and feedback. It really helps us understand what the needs are of repository teams and the repository community and what everyone wants this service to be. So we really want to make sure to incorporate all of those, all of that really great feedback that you're providing. If you are interested in participating in a future cohort, there is a expression of interest form that you can fill out that helps us learn a little bit more about your current and future repository needs. It also helps us determine cohort sizes and timelines. So please don't be shy. It's not a formal indication of your intent to migrate over to Scolaris. It's really just to start that conversation with us. We will also be launching our Scolaris website later this month. This is a site that will for folks that are familiar with other Scholars Portal services, it will be similar to the sort of structure of those other sites, but it will have its own colorful Scolaris theme, which is really exciting. But I'm not going to be sharing that part of it yet. But I did want to, before we go, and as Gabby has mentioned, show you the Scolaris logo. And so here it is. This is the logo. I wanted to, oh, thank you for these nice reactions here. So I would be remiss not to thank Bart Kuula, who is our web and discovery services librarian, who has done the design for many of our Scholars Portal brands, and so this one is no exception. Really, what we wanted to do with this logo, we were inspired by the striking design of a geodesic dome, and looking at that sort of geometric outline as a nod to the service being infrastructure, which both technical and community infrastructure. Those triangles you see here can be representative of the various pieces of the institutional repository community and the repositories that themselves, that really, when we all come together, all of these pieces contribute to the overall structural integrity of the dome, of sort of the service, and the strength of Canadian research. So you will see a little bit more of this logo, well, a lot more of this logo on our website very shortly. And as always, with all things Scolaris, there's a lot more to look forward to. So thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about this service. I see a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A. So I will hand it over to Gabby just to make sure that we're okay for timing for these.
Yeah, I think we've got sort of two questions. One is sort of combined, so we can talk about those briefly, and then if you wanted to follow up in the chat with the type answer option. But the first question from Chris is curious about reasons for choosing DSpace over Islandora, which is also open source. Is this discussed in any of the working group's documents? And then sort of following that up with that, COPL uses Islandora for its multi-tenancy shared repository, ARCA. So I'm not trying to push Islandora, just interested to know what the deciding factors were.
Sure, that's a great question. And that is something that was covered in the OCL working group. Actually did an investigation, I think an interview, and Jacqueline may be able to chime in with ARCA to talk about that model. But yes, both of the working groups documents do cover why DSpace was selected over Islandora, which perhaps we can put a link to one of the reports if that's something we can share. Is that something that we're able to share, Jacqueline? I believe Chris is outside of OCL.
I'm going to look around.
Okay.
Anything I find will go in the chat.
Okay.
All right, we will follow that one up. And then a second question from Wade, do you anticipate that OAI harvesting of metadata will be available?
Yes, that's something that we're working with our two pilot schools already to do the OAI PMH harvesting for LAC, Library and Archives Canada. So yes, we do anticipate that that is one of the integrations that we will be able to provide, and it's also one that I think every institution that we've worked with has mentioned wanting to have that. So yes, that's the short answer.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. There's a lot of love for the Scolaris logo in the chat, which I heartily agree with. It's beautiful. So thank you for this lovely presentation and for sharing the logo. We're all very, very excited to hear more about Scolaris. I know I'm always pestering you for updates. I love to hear what's going on. So thank you very much. We're going to take a bit of a break now, and then we will come back. So it's 1:24 according to my time. So I think we'll take a break until about 1:30. And then at 1:30, we're going to start the pet parade. So we will not start back with the next session, which is a round of lightning talks, until 1:40. But if you would like to see the pet parade, please make sure that you are back and ready to watch your screens at 1:30, and we will be starting that then. All right, it is time we've all been waiting for. So I'm going to switch my slides here. Do. Okay, can everyone see the Pets on Parade slide?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. Thank you to everyone who submitted photos. The best emails I've ever received in my life. I was very happy to be the one receiving the submissions this year, and I hope to for all the years in the future. It was a delight, so thank you very much. And we have some truly fantastic pets this year. We are getting started with Chloe. Chloe was adopted in January 2024. She is probably an Australian Kelpie and is about 2.5 years old. Back in October, she had 7 puppies, all of whom were adopted, which is lovely and heartwarming. And Chloe is a very sweet and loving girl, which I'm sure we can all tell immediately by looking at these wonderful pictures of sweet Chloe and her incredible ears. This is submitted by Alexa from UW. Thank you very much. This is Juniper. Juniper is a former street cat turned spoiled princess. She enjoys walks in nature, and this picture was taken on a weekend hike at a local conservation area. She also enjoys ripping her toys to shreds, lounging in the sun, and crashing Zoom meetings when Alyssa is working from home. Her favorite treats are fresh catnip and yogurt, and you can always get on her good side by slipping her some cheese under the table. This is Starling. Starling is a very sweet pup with beautiful brown eyes. She is very photogenic. This is a very lovely, wonderful photo of sweet Starling submitted by Catherine Steeves from Western University. Next up, we have Vinny, a very majestic 10-year-old former barn cat. He loves cuddling and sitting on Ellie's lap during Zoom meetings. We have lots of Zoom meeting companions in this year's pet parade, which is very fitting. I hope some of these pets are joining us right now. Next, we have Bear Thunderboots. Bear's favorite activities are playing soccer, watching bird movies on her iPad, and hanging out with us. Whenever she runs around, she does so with a heavy step, letting everyone know that she is on her way. And when it is time for a nap, she insists on having a cozy blanket to tuck into, which I'm sure we can all understand. And this is submitted by Ed from Carleton University. This is Jessie, who is a 4-year-old black lab whose only known emotions are love and happiness. I wish we could all be so lucky as Jessie. And this is submitted by Katie from Ontario Tech University. What a lovely, beautiful red collar as well. This is Archie Gangster Foley. Archie is a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel that is obsessed with his ball, birds, and squirrels. He enjoys long walks in the woods and a good swim. Dislikes include sleeping in his own bed and darkness. And this was submitted by Krista from Oakle. Next, we have Oberon, who is a 15-year-old round boy who likes strawberries and licking plastic bags. He sleeps all day unless he is meowing to be let outside. But as Jessica says, he is too stupid to be left outside unsupervised. So they spend a lot of time sitting on the porch with him. This is Birdie. She is a wonderful friend from a weekend of pet sitting, submitted by Jacqueline. She's a very handsome girl, and she made some wonderful new kid friends during this pet sitting weekend. A very, very special girl. We have Hazel and Lima. Hazel is an apricot miniature schnoodle, poodle schnauzer mix that they ended up boarding during Carlos's UK trip. Coming from a family with multiple dogs, she bonded so much with them that after they left the UK, she ran away from home to look for them. And 5 hours later, she came back defeated. Lima is a miniature silver poodle who won't take no for an answer when she wants a treat. And if staring does not work, she will push the screen down until you get the message. So she is very committed to getting a treat. This is Monkey and Matcha. Monkey is a 3-year-old Maine Coon rescue whom they adopted a week ago. Oh, very, very new from an animal shelter. She is settling in quite nicely and her fur is starting to come back in, which is wonderful to hear. And Monkey is a lover of laps and purrs very loudly. And Matcha is a 2-year-old Bernedoodle and she loves a cold floor. Who doesn't? These are submitted by Katya from Western. This is Maggie, who is an 11-week-old Griff who is quickly settling into her role as resident heartbreaker. With 2 varieties of fur and a very soft little belly, she offers an exceptional petting experience. And Maggie recently relocated to Toronto and is looking forward to a summer of adventures with Julia. This is Poppy, and Poppy is a toy poodle, and her greatest passion is pulling shoelaces out of any shoe she can get at. She just turned 1 in April, so a very, very happy birthday to Poppy. And this was submitted by Bart from Scholars Portal. Next up, we have our only bunnies of the pet parade this year, but top 3 bunnies for sure, Reese, Aggie, and Huck. Aggie and Huck are a pair of lovely fluffy friends with beautiful fur and excellent ears. And Reese is a very cute foster bunny who is looking for his forever home. And these pictures were submitted by Liesel from Algoma. We have Emma, aka Scabby Cat, who is quite needy and talks a lot. Emma hates all other cats and is displeased to be included in this year's pet parade. Very sorry, Emma, but thank you anyway, Sarah, for sending the photo. We have Judy, who is a 5-year-old Labradoodle. She has very nice curly fur and a perfect little nose. She is seen curled up here on the couch. This was submitted by Lynn from McMaster. We have Kit Kat, who is a 2-year-old tuxedo cat. And as you can see, she is really, really into this lamp. And it's a very beautiful lamp, so I completely understand. And Kit Kat, photos of Kit Kat were submitted by Mohana from Scholars Portal. And we have Tonks, who is a big weirdo, and she has a much more sensible sister named Luna, who is not pictured here. But we are delighted to have this wonderfully silly photo of Tonks today, submitted by Mita from University of Windsor. And we have Sir Watson Wallace of Edelston. Sir Watson Wallace is a soon-to-be 1-year-old Scottish Terrier from Montreal, Quebec. He's a big Star Wars fan, especially the lightsabers. He absolutely loves bananas, and his favorite activity is people watching for hours on end out on the patio, even in the winter. And this was submitted by Nicholas from CRKN. That concludes our pet parade for this year. Thank you everyone who sent in photos. Again, it was wonderful. And thank you all for your enthusiasm in the chat. And I'm seeing the applause and hearts come in now, as you should, for these wonderful pets. So a round of applause and appreciation for our pets on parade for this year. And we are going to come back now. We're a minute ahead of schedule, but we're going to move forward with our next round of lightning talks. So Jacqueline, if you want to introduce our first upcoming lightning talk.
Sure thing. That's a really hard one to follow, but hopefully everybody's in a good and positive mood for the next little while. So the second set of lightning talks that we have today is focused on enhancing Scholars Portal services, and I am delighted to introduce Ginsley Mondesser, my colleague here at Scholars Portal, who is going to be talking about a systems theory perspective for virtual reference services. Over to you, Ginsley.
Great. I'll share my slides. Okay. Okay. Presentation title is The Power of Positive Feedback, a System Theory Perspective in Virtual Reference Service. Sorry. My name is Ginsley Mondésir. I'm the Virtual Reference Librarian at Scholars Portal. Today we are exploring the significant changes positive feedback can bring to our virtual reference service. This presentation is tagged with themes such as leadership, motivation, and management. Okay, today let's begin with an overview of our virtual reference service. Did you know that last year alone we answered over 28,000 chats? Our chat service started in 2011, and 12 years later, we have more than double the chat usage. There are 16 participating schools and over 300 operators staffing the service. Let's pause and ask this question. What exactly constitutes a system? A system delineates boundaries, a system meaning as a border. In this case, we're only referring to chat service, not library questions sent via email or in-person reference at the desk, at the reference desk. A system has some actor, meaning operator or patrons. A system has an order. There's a workflow from the patron to the operator. Now that we have outlined the fundamental of a system, let's select a theory to evaluate its efficacy. System theory seeks to model a system dynamics, constraints, and interrelation, providing insight into its contextual landscape. The most important keyword is, the two most important keywords are context and interrelation or interconnection. Let's take a look at some of the virtual reference service component to see which part of the service can we enhance in order to increase the overall quality of the service. Committees. Committees, we have various number of committees and working group that maintain or assess the service or provide guidance. Chat service software, we did an assessment 2 years ago and invited operator to fill in a survey. And the result was that the chat service software is still, that we're using is still relevant. Our chat usage grows, the tendency is to grow each year. And through promotional material like poster or website redesign, we're increasing the accessibility and visibility of the service in partnership with our participating school. Feedback from our guests is a component, I would say a subcomponent as well. Feedback are mainly used by managers. Feedback from our guests, submitted by our guests, are mainly used by local coordinator to improve the service, especially when it's negative feedback, or that we can take action to so that we can take action to resolve any discrepancies. Again, the utilization of feedback remains mostly managerial, lacking direct engagement with operator. Our goal, like mentioned earlier, is exploring the significant changes positive feedback can bring to our virtual reference service. How can the suggestion box, or in our case, the exit survey form, receive adequate attention from our operator. The solution is by sharing it with the operator, at least the positive feedback, as much as we can. Again, our goal is how can we change at least one component or one element of our system to impact the service positively. We decided to focus on the interrelation of feedback from our guests and sharing it with operator. Started 2020, we started to share selective feedback with operator, mostly feedback that mention operator name. We map the feedback to the operator who answered that chat. This is an example of feedback. Let's say I redacted the username or the operator name. Let's say I said Gensi did great, thank you. And then we send it to the operator. First, mainly we share the feedback via email with the operator to show appreciation, and then when they reply, this those are the example of gratefulness or happiness from the operator when they reply to the email. Overall, we noticed that sharing feedback with the operator can enhance their sense of purpose of the service, and also sometimes they could have many chats answered in a day. It could be a busy shift, and having receiving a thank you is it seems like it's grateful. It's great for the from the operator. Next step is keep sending email to the operator, and then keep sharing those feedback to the operator. And we also need to try to map a form submission to an operator, meaning that currently a form submission, if the feedback doesn't mention a name, sometimes it's difficult to it's more complex to locate the operator. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kinsley. We're going to move right on to the next section, but go ahead and put any questions that you have for Kinsley in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to follow up on them. So next up, I'm excited to welcome my colleagues Ravit David, Sienna Smith, and is it just you talking today, Ravit? And also and also Milicia. Welcome, and you're going to talk to us today about a new tool, the ACE Table of Contents tool. So I will pass it over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to join us today, and thank you, Jacqueline, for introducing us. My name is Ravit David. I have the privilege of serving as the coordinator for the Accessible Content e-portal, or ACE, for those of you who already know the service. Today we are excited to share a significant enhancement we developed for the ACE content. Our latest initiative focuses on a new workflow designed to create and improve the table of contents in ACE books, ensuring greater accessibility and ease of navigation for our users. I'm now delighted to pass it over to our team, Sienna Smith and Melissa Ivetik, who will provide you with more details and insights into this exciting development. So without further ado.
Sorry, let me just get into that. So with our work providing accessible content, table of contents functionality helps students a lot, because large PDFs, especially high quality scans, can be slow on certain computers, which means that students with, let's say, access to less powerful computers are more in need of smaller chunks, so individual chapters. Physical books obviously don't have this issue, so this makes this an accessibility problem specific to students with reading disabilities. Our table of contents coverage is low, and that coverage is low quality. But with our new tool, we're making a target that all requests received after the 1st of March are going to be checked for table contents quality and corrected if necessary. The majority of books that we process at the ACE service, and by majority I mean almost 60%, don't display a table of contents to the user. And about 30% of the books have a dysfunctional table of contents, so that can mean garbled chapter titles, all the chapters smushed into one. And this is because we generate, by default, the table of contents automatically based on the OCR generated text of scanned books. We convert that to our own metadata format and we generate chapter downloads from there. So layout context is lost since it's just linear text. So you don't get the actual information of the layout of the table of contents, and multi-level chunking. So if there's chapter 1A, chapter 1B, then the algorithm that we use can't handle that. Previously to this, we've considered editing the raw XML for each book that we upload, and potentially canceling all table of contents generation since we weren't sure how to approach the issue without giving students low quality content. This is an example of one of the better OCR outputs from the automatic generation. As you can see, it's still not handling the multi-level chapters, so the introduction isn't splitting properly into the 2 chapters, and it's misreading Lit 101 as Lit ROR. This is an example of bad OCR. As you can see, that there are a lot of multi-part chapters here, and also the OCR is having trouble distinguishing which lines are different chapters and which lines are multi-line. So which lines are going on to the next line and which one aren't. So this is a really hard page for the algorithm to read. This chart shows everything uploaded between January 8th and when we started the actual pilot of this. It should be noted that a fair amount of the no table of contents statistic comes from upload source from the Internet Archive, which we don't generate table of contents data for automatically. However, other books without visible table of contents have data generated, but the data is too internally inconsistent to display. We can see more of this in the next slide. This is ACE table of contents according to Book Interchange Tag Suite bits metadata. And so some of these have missing tags, some of these have missing XML files. Some of these have table of contents files that simply don't parse, so they don't display. And then for the ones with bad OCR, we are going to have to check that all manually because, you know, only human QA can detect those.
Okay. So now I will take over and talk about the editor. To access the editor, one needs an admin tool account with editing credentials. We have provided a link to the admin tool here on these slides. Currently, only a few people at Scholars Portal can edit talk, including me and Sienna, but accounts can be created easily and are available upon request for anyone that wants to join the initiative. So now I'll describe how the editor works. So when you log into the admin tool and select the ACE Talk Editor tab, you'll be met with this page. The only thing on it will be this input box asking you to enter a common ID for the book whose talk you want to edit. Once you enter the common ID and hit search, this is what the output will look like. There will be some fields that you need to fill out with the talk editor table itself. The first field asks if the PDF has a Scholars Portal generated title page. Since scanned item PDFs come with a page at the beginning, describe the work's title and other information, the answer will be yes. The second field asks for the page offset. We determine this by going through the PDF and finding the first page of the book according to the book's table of contents Then we take that book page number and subtract it from the PDF page number on that book page. So that is our offset. Finally, the last prompt asks for the total number of pages on the PDF. As for editing the talk, you can start with the section or chapter title, inputting the book page, after which the PDF column will be auto-filled because of the offset we previously calculated. And this last column is when you want to add a row for the next chapter. Now I'll go through 2 examples of what the edited talks look like after we work on them using the editor. The first example is one where the generated talk is not complete gibberish, but is sort of incomplete and lacking some details. There is also not multiple PDF download buttons for each chapter, but there's only one, and this can result from bad OCR quality. After editing, we can clearly see the separate chapters and their corresponding download buttons. We also separate the front matter section of the book from the actual content and provide a download button for just that part as well. The second example has separate PDF download options for each chapter, but the headings mainly contain gibberish, which can also happen because of bad OCR quality. After editing, we can once again see the separate chapters and their corresponding download options. In this particular example, it is also necessary to create a section for the list of plates, as it was also listed in the book's table of contents on top of the actual chapters of the book. So hopefully these 2 examples showed how useful this editor tool is and how much it helps improve the accessibility of specific chapters of ACE books. We want to give a special thanks to Bart Kawula and Annie Thomas Silverajan from Scholars Portal. And now I will pass it back to Ravit to finish up our presentation.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening. If you want to help us complete a table of content for one of our books, please email us at this address, and we'll be happy to open an account for you and walk you through this process that Sienna and Melissa just demonstrated. And so if you have anything urgent, you don't have to wait for us, and you can do it yourself. So we're looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great. It's very fun to see that come to fruition. We don't have any questions yet, but we'll give folks a minute to think it over. Questions for the ACE team, questions for Ginsley. We have a comment in the chat. Amazing work. Thanks so much for the update, Ravit. Yes, it is very exciting to see these developments. What Zoom is missing is the someone is typing function. So I'll just wait another minute before I hand it back. What I liked about this combo of talks is having one that it's at quite a high level, thinking about service and service motivation and bringing people in to and buying into a service, and one that's really nitty gritty, going in there and counting the pages and making sure that each chapter is looking good. And just to reiterate what Ravit said, a lot of folks are already using the admin tool, but not for this kind of thing. This is a sort of an added layer on it, but the hope is that folks either in the accessibility office or beyond are able to they can ask us for support, but when they need it sort of quickly, they can go in and do it themselves. Okay, and it looks like someone has asked for the contact email, and it's ace@scholarsportal.info if you're interested in learning more or getting set up to be able to do this. And I still don't see any questions coming in, and we're just almost at 2 o'clock, so I'm going to pass it back to Gabby. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you to all of our presenters. We are going to move forward. Up next, we have the OCL update from Amy Greenberg, the Executive Director of OCL. So I'm going to pass it over to Amy now. Do you have any slides that you want to share on your end, Amy?
I do, in fact, have slides.
Okay, great.
There.
I'll pass that over to you then.
All right. The old screen sharing. How does that look?
Loading.
Loading.
I can see that it's your screen, but the slides are
My
loading.
screen
they are
sharing
coming.
is
Are they showing for you, Amy?
They are.
Oh,
Sorry, they
click
are,
to
but
exit
now
full screen. They're
I have a
coming.
blank. Oh, why Google? Why? Okay. Technical difficulties. Sorry, let's try that one more time. When I launch the slideshow, it tells me that my screen sharing is paused. Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, folks. I apologize hugely for this. Let me just download them as a PDF.
If it's still giving you trouble, then if you want to send me a link to them, Amy, then I can share them on my end if it doesn't work after that.
Alrighty. Okay, let's try this version.
There we go.
Okay.
You're there now.
Exciting time. Sorry about that, folks. Good afternoon to all, and thank you, Gabby, and thank you to all my Scholars Portal colleagues for putting together another great day, and together with, of course, our folks on the OCL SP committee, and thank you for taking time for an OCL update during Scholars Portal days. My name is Amy Greenberg. I'm the Executive Director of OCL. I normally don't have problems with screen sharing, but today happens to us all, right? I will be providing you with an update on some of the good work that OCL has been doing over the past year, and there's a lot of it. So let's get started. Oh boy, this is fun. Okay. All right. So quick overview of what I am going to talk about today. Going to give you some updates around collaborative futures in Omni, talk about communication and member engagement, information resources, governance, and then a bunch of other updates that didn't really fit into any other category. So yay, scrolling. All right, so on the topic of collaborative futures in Omni, always lots going on. I would say that our kind of the biggest update, which I think many of you probably know already, is that this summer we will be officially welcoming our 19th Omni Partner School, TMU, and we're very excited to have them on board for sure. On the governance side of things, in a sort of push to kind of coordinate and consolidate all of our different OCL activities. We are trying to get all the collaborative future stuff kind of more firmly under the OCL umbrella. And so the Collaborative Future Steering Committee is now an OCL standing committee, reporting directly into the executive, as our other standing committees do. So that's just a bit of behind the scenes governance for you. On the communication side of things with Omni, we continue to have our regular Cat Chat and Omni Monday drop-ins, and I have included a link on the slides, which I will share later with the Scholars Portal team, to the wiki page that has the sort of the upcoming schedule for topics that have been scheduled, and also contains some recordings from past sessions. So I encourage folks to check that out if there are Omni topics that you would like to hear about. And lastly, on the kind of communication side, and I believe Catherine Davidson made reference to this yesterday in her introduction, but we will be doing the Collaborative Futures mini conference again this year, and that is coming up on June 5th. So stay tuned for more info about that. On the subcommittee side of things, as always, we rely very heavily on the Collaborative Futures subcommittees to do policy setting, procedure setting, to do testing and system configuration. And I just wanted to give everyone a few examples. This list is by no means exhaustive at all, but just to highlight some of the things that the different subcommittees have done or are currently working on. So these include things like, and I hope y'all like acronyms because there's a lot of them on here, but these include things like the Collaborative Futures Metadata Management and Standards Subcommittee, working on a retention procedure for North Nord. Those of you who aren't familiar with North, it is the sort of national level retention for certain types of collections. And so the CFMMS folks have worked out a way to kind of indicate those retention schedules and commitments in our shared ALMA, which is great. On the CF Ducks, which is the discovery and user side, and CFSA, which is our systems and analytics, those folks kind of are doing ongoing work, great work about kind of reviewing relevant feature release notes for ALMA and Primo VE, and looking at anything related to accessibility recommendations or where a configuration change might be needed to best enhance or provide accessibility for all of our users. As I said, an ongoing task and greatly appreciated. We also have policy and procedures around Ferber and deduping that have been developed by two of our subcommittees working together, and our sort of, I guess, newest, I think it's still a new project, although it has been underway for a little while now. And this is the very impressively named NZERM working group, which is the Network Zone e-resources management working group. And they are undertaking a pilot project on shared e-resource licensing to make the best use of our shared network zone. And that work is happening under the auspices of the Collaborative Future Shared Resources Committee. So thank you to all the subcommittees and all the ones that I didn't mention. As I said, this list is not exhaustive. It is just a bit of a snapshot for you. Okay, so moving on to the area of communications and member engagement. Those of you looking at the slide can see that the theme of this is relaunch. We did a lot of relaunching over the past year. So there is now an OCL annual report that came out in late 2023. We also are relaunching the OCL email newsletter. The first one just came out in March. And maybe most excitingly, last year we relaunched the OCL Award, and we had about half a dozen really excellent, strong submissions. But in the end, the award went to two Collaborative Futures project teams who had done some work early on in Collaborative Futures to focus us on getting the automated fulfillment network implemented and going, and just really increasing that ability to share our resources within our schools. And I think we can all agree that that's been a completely transformative thing for OCL. We know that there is a lot more sharing of our physical resources happening among the schools, and we've gotten some really, really positive feedback from our users, and staff are working together in new ways. So it really has been a truly transformative thing, and that work is well recognized. I will say as well, and this is something that I don't think is news to anyone, but the OCL office has worked very closely with our Scholars Portal colleagues on Project RAMP, which involved migrating our content off of the old SpotDocs wiki to the new SpotDocs wiki, and at the same time, really taking the opportunity to create a kind of information management workflow, to create standards, to think about document retention, and to think about kind of where and how and for how long we keep documents and resources that are of interest to both the kind of OCL and Scholars Portal teams, as well as our member libraries and all of our great governance groups, our committees and our communities, and working groups, so that folks can easily access what they need. And that I think you'll all agree that the new wiki looks great, and it is pretty easy to find things. And so kudos to the Project RAMP team and to everyone who was involved in that. Okay, moving on to information resources. Information resources are kind of, I want to say the bread and butter of OCL, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I think it's just really important to highlight that work because folks who are not involved in collections and licensing probably don't have as much of a kind of a grasp of the scope of what OCL does. So I just thought this was a really good opportunity to kind of give you some numbers. I'm sure you're all aware that OCL as a consortium, one of our main reasons for existing is to negotiate collective purchasing and to take advantage of that shared purchasing power. And historically, we've been very successful in that. Last year, we were able to sort of keep price increases to about an average of 2%, which involves a lot of negotiating with and talking to vendors and a lot of talking to you all and to your colleagues. And I'm just, I'm really proud of everyone who is working on that and of what we've been able to accomplish. OCL handles over 200 licenses on behalf of our membership, and that entails quite a lot of money. And we're very aware and try to be as conscientious as we can about managing and stewarding that on your behalf. And so we thank you for your trust. And again, just a shout out to everyone in the OCL office and on the OCL IR committee who's involved in all that great work. Fiscal year end just wrapped up, so yay. Of course, we are still finalizing a few things, most notably not on the slide. I did just want to say, I'm sure many of you are aware, and kind of tying back to the theme of our presentation, of the presentations yesterday, AI usage clauses in licenses are a big deal this year and are coming up more and more as we renegotiate and renew licenses. So currently, OCL is negotiating with Springer Nature on behalf of our members. We've been going back and forth with accepted language, and I think we're getting close, but in fact, we don't have an official renewal on Springer Nature yet for this year. As I said, though, it's being worked on, and we're also very fortunate to have AI usage language in other licenses, most notably for Elsevier, that was negotiated by our partner consortium, Sierra Can, on behalf of Canadian members. So we're fortunate to be able to have that as an example to work on. So just a little behind the scenes peek there. And the last thing I wanted to say about information resources is that hopefully you'll all remember we put out an announcement last year with a pilot project for a consortial EBA, electronic book acquisition pilot with Wiley as the publisher. And I'm very pleased to report that we have 100% renewed participation for 2024. So all of the OCL schools who were involved in that EBA pilot have decided to continue for another year. And so kudos to that working group for all their efforts. And speaking of working groups, I just wanted to highlight two new working groups that have started under the auspices of OCL IR, both working on kind of collections writ large. One of them is collective collecting, and one is on open access. So really huge areas and areas of importance to OCL, and ones where we think we see opportunities to build on the work happening, both in terms of us having a shared platform in Omni and just shared interest in both of these areas. So stay tuned for more updates from those groups. They are both kind of in a very exploratory phase right now, but we expect updates over the coming year. All right, moving on to the very exciting topic of governance. Speaking of things that a lot of which happened behind the scenes. So the OCL office, working with the OCL executive and other committees, we have just been trying to get some standardization across all of our terms of reference. So those of you who are involved in committees or working groups may have had conversations about your terms of reference, and thank you all for those contributions to those discussions. We've also been trying to just really clarify and tighten and write up what all the reporting structures are for all those different groups, and really just, again, make things a bit more transparent and make that information more accessible to you. And we do have some more documentation forthcoming that will probably be released probably in the summer after the spring OCL directors meeting. As part of the governance work, we've also revised the OCL bylaws to reflect the current environment. The bylaws had not been updated in a very long time and were quite outdated in terms of how OCL actually kind of is formed and conducts its business. And again, also as part of the governance work, we've developed terms of reference for the OCL Executive Committee, as well as descriptions about what the different OCL Executive Officer roles look like. As I said, very exciting if you like governance, which I do. All right, lastly, other updates. I am not going to get into the task force on AI and machine learning. We had a great update on that yesterday from Catherine Steeves, and thank you, Catherine, for providing that. I'm happy to take questions, though, if folks have any questions that didn't get addressed yesterday. I wanted to note, too, that there is a feasibility of resource sharing working group that is wrapping up its work and preparing recommendations for directors. This is, of course, related to the sunsetting of RACER, which we'll hear about. I believe it's in the next presentation. So kind of thinking about, what our way forward together as OCL looks like for resource sharing. And again, those are recommendations that will be able to be shared after the spring directors meeting, so sometime in the summer. Also wanted to remind folks that we have a relatively new committee, the OCL Truth and Reconciliation Committee, that was formed, I think probably in late 2022 and started meeting in 2023. We do still have an opening for another member on that committee. If that's work that interests you and you have questions about the committee, please feel free to reach out to me or to anyone in the OCL office. And we'd love to have more participation. And that group is also coming out with a sort of a work plan or sort of goals for next year, and those things that can be again shared a bit later in the year. Also, an exciting initiative that I'm really sort of proud of that we started over the past year is a visiting researcher program. This is a pretty lightweight program in the sense that we don't have a lot of qualifications or rules around it. We really just wanted to do it as a pilot and see if there was interest from the OCL membership, and we did have sufficient interest that we have 2 visiting researchers in 2024. We have Jeff Sinclair and Joanne Rummig. And the idea behind this program, for those who might have missed the announcement, is just that it's an opportunity to kind of work together with folks who are taking research leave at the OCL member libraries and kind of think about how they might, if they want to incorporate an OCL component into their research. So where, they do research on the topic of interest and OCL provides them with some infrastructure, some communication infrastructure, help set up meetings with OCL groups to perhaps to get feedback and to share feedback. And the idea is that those research outputs can then be shared out widely amongst the OCL libraries, and perhaps can be things that that folks incorporate into their work, or even potential things for OCL to incorporate. So it's just the idea of kind of sharing library related research more widely. So we'll see how the program goes, and you can stay tuned for sort of a call for new visiting researchers next year. The last thing that I want to mention is something that we have not done a lot of announcing about, if that's a word, communication about, mostly because we are still waiting for official confirmation from our parent organization, COU, the Council of Ontario Universities. But some of you may be aware that three sort of new, in terms of their independent university status, NOSM, Université Hearst, and Université de l'Ontario Français, which is here in Toronto, are now provisional OCL members. They are provisional OCL members because they are provisional COU members. And so, as I said, we are kind of waiting for direction from COU on the kind of final status of that provisional membership. But I'm sure that you will all be hearing more about that in a little while. But I wanted to flag that. And folks from those schools are welcome to join OCL communities and committees for the time being. And some of you may indeed have started working with colleagues there. Okay, lastly, I just wanted to flag a couple of things that are not exactly new, but are kind of renewal or renewing. One of those is, you may or may not know that OCL has been a development partner with the Public Knowledge Project, or PKP, for many years now. We are just about to sign a new memorandum of understanding that kind of clarifies the roles of both of our roles in that partnership, and clarifies the various contributions that OCL is going to provide. In the past, we've done a lot of the in-kind contributing through the wonderful folks on the Scholars Portal team. Now we're trying to turn our attention a bit more widely to other kinds of in-kind contributions. So I'll just take this opportunity to say that if you or your colleagues at an OCL school are doing work with PKP or their products, most notably OJS, Open Journal System, which, as you know, Scholars Portal hosts for many of our OCL member libraries, or OMP, the Open Monograph Project. If you're doing work around those, please feel free to reach out to the OCL office and let us know. We're trying to get kind of a sense of the landscape in terms of how folks might already be engaging with PKP in these different ways. And lastly, I'll just say we are currently in the last year of our current strategic plan and strategic priorities. And so we will be embarking on a new strategic plan to start in 2025 and expect some more communication about that in the summer. We will be looking for folks to help us develop that plan. Okay, before I stop, I really just need to say, since the theme of today is collaboration and collaborative intelligence, that none of the great work that happens at OCL could happen without the OCL office team. And so please join me in thanking Adita, Noor, Annika, Alex, Krista, Katrina, and Ellie for all the great work that they do and their contributions to the daily work of OCL. And I see lots of little hands, so thank you all very, very much. Happy to take questions if there is time. If not, I'm around and I'm happy to answer questions that will show up in the Q&A. Thank you for your attention and for your forbearance as I attempted to share my screen.
Thank you, Amy. I don't see any questions in the Q&A yet, but if you will, we'll leave you as panelist status for a few minutes in case any pop up and you want to answer those through the type answer section. And we will move forward now to our final SP updates for the event. And we're going to start off with Sabina and Ravit, who are going to talk about the ACE assessment project.
Hello. All right, give me 1 second here to share my screen. There we go. All right. So today we want to talk about this project that we've been undergoing to do an assessment of the Accessible Content ePortal, or ACE, which you've already heard a little bit about today with the Table of Contents tool development. We did talk a little bit about this at last year's Scholars Portal Day, so this will be a little bit of an update and on a project that's still ongoing, about to wrap up. So last year, we developed something called the Scholars Portal Service Assessment Framework, which is a flexible framework to allow us to assess different Scholars Portal services. Basically, all of our services are so different, and the types of things we might want to assess about them are so different that we wanted to create a really flexible structure that would allow SPOD, which is the Scholars Portal Operations and Development Committee, the OCL level committee that's kind of oversees Scholars Portal operations, to be able to quickly spin up a working group anytime they need to do an assessment of a service, maybe because there's some future directions or developments that they're considering and they want some evidence-based decision-making to gather evidence for that. Maybe they're looking at something more about understanding the quality or stating the value of a service, different types of use cases. So we drew up this framework, and it was a little bit hard to understand how it would work in practice. So we decided to do one assessment using this framework first before we kind of formalized the framework. And this assessment of ACE is the first project to be done using this service assessment framework. So we got some directives or a mandate from SPOD for what we were going to be assessing for the ACE service. This is kind of the broad level summary. The goal is to conduct an assessment of ACE to identify barriers to usage and to understand the alternate format service landscape. Assessment will ensure that ACE's continuing development aligns with anticipated policy changes and the needs of end users and local library staff. So with that in mind, we formed our working group. The members are listed on this slide. The working group has representation from a number of different groups, from the SPOD and OCL SP groups, the accessibility community at OCL, and the working group of ACE specifically, as well as we were really fortunate to be able to have an actual longtime ACE user to join our working group to share the perspective of ACE users in our work. So a huge thanks to all of the members of the working group. So what did we actually assess in our assessment? We looked at what sources OCL member libraries use to fulfill alternate format requests and what the sort of pros and cons are of these different services, including ACE. The quality of the content that was submitted for the community submission program. So that's a program that lets institutions add things that they've digitized locally to the ACE portal. And then we looked at potential barriers to the usage of ACE by eligible end users at OCL member libraries to eventually come up with some strengths of ACE and opportunities for future development and growth of the service. And I will pass it to Ravit to talk about the assessment itself.
Thank you, Sabina. So hello, everyone, again, and thank you for joining our presentation. So we had three different assessment methods. We were split into subgroups, and we worked quite a while on establishing those. One was a Lancy staff survey, which some of you kindly participated in. Then we had quality assessment of community submissions, for which we wanted to check the metadata completeness, how accurate it is, the scan quality, the OCR quality, and of course to look at remediation level. And then the third method we used to assess was comparative analysis of similar services and platform. And for that, we tried to have representatives from Europe and North America. So we had the LIA catalog from Italy, for example, and the Royal National Institute of the Blind from the UK. We had Attitrust and Bookshare from the US, and we had CELA from Canada, in addition, of course, to ACE, which is a Canadian service. Next slide, please. So what are the main findings? There are of course way more findings that we could of course include in this slide, and you are more than welcome to read the report. But basically the staff survey suggested that ACE is a well-used and valuable service to our community. The turnaround times can be a bit long, and the token system could use some refreshment because it can be a little bit complicated to use sometimes. And then the other thing we had is that local staff usually don't have the capacity either to promote ACE, to remediate, to train, and to help with the ACE service locally. For community submissions, we looked at different qualities. We could see that there is inconsistency in the metadata and the locally scanned quality, the OCRs. But overall, the OCRs was good. Definitely normalizing the metadata would be something we want to talk about in the future. Finally, the platform comparison. So ACE is the only user-facing alternate format that is dedicated to the academic environment and actually promotes intellectual freedom. It can be a very, very eccentric, unused text that users would be interested in, and we will make our best and our utmost effort to provide this text in the right format, which is quite unusual. And then ACE lacks multiple format options that we're hoping to work on. Comprehensive quality assurance could use some planning and targeted discovery experience that we looked at. Next slide, please. So what are the recommendations that came out of this report? Again, there are more than what's on this slide, and we invite you to read the report, but this is basically a quick summary. Definitely invest in remediation and add more file formats. That was a big need that came up. Leverage distributed workflows and existing networks to improve sharing and accessible content. Prioritize communication and add support to staff and end users. As we said, the local capacity is often lacking, as we heard. And foster partnership to develop advocacy strategies across the country. Next slide, please. So we collected feedback after the report. We distributed the report to the community, and we wanted to hear back from the community. In this slide, you can see some of the testimonies that we collected. Overall, ACE gets a really positive feedback from the community, and mostly there was a strong agreement with regards to the recommendation about the investment needed to bring ACE to the next level in terms of remediation, format, update the technology, and improve communication efforts to promote ACE locally and across the different schools. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sabina again.
All right, thank you. So what are the next steps? As you may have seen in that last slide, that community review process just happened in April, just concluded about a little over a week ago. So we are taking the feedback from that community submission, making a few changes to the report, and then it will be going back to the Scholars Portal Operations and Development Committee, as I said, SPOD, to review in their next meeting. And then the OCL Directors Spring Meeting, which is happening at the end of May, they will be reading and reviewing the report and recommendations. Once they have read the report, the plan is to publish it publicly and share the feedback and discussions that the directors had back with the community, so they can prioritize our recommendations, start to act on them. Anything that requires extra resources, that's something that will be discussed at the director level. And hopefully as soon as August, we can start implementing some of the recommendations for this report. So that's our kind of quick summary of the status of this project so far. As I said, the final report should be available to the public in July, and we will also, after this project is concluded, also be writing a report about how the framework itself worked, which maybe will only be relevant to assessment nerds like me. But yeah, that's our talk. Any questions?
Don't see any questions in the Q&A yet, but I'll give people a moment. And yeah, I'd like to echo Andrew's comment in the chat of thanks to the assessment team for their hard work on this report. I know, yeah, a ton of work went into this. So thank you to the working group and to both of you for presenting on it, and Sabina for developing the framework as well.
Yeah, I'll say also thank you to Mark Weiler from Wilfrid Laurier and Lynn Service from McMaster, who I think are both on the call today. They were the co-chairs of this working group and really dedicated a lot of time into kind of navigating it through sometimes uncertain waters. It's our first ever project using this framework.
Okay. Don't see any other questions having come up yet. But if you want to keep an eye on the Q&A in the next couple of minutes in case any come in, you can answer those over text. That would be lovely. Perfect. And I will pass it on to Julia once more to talk to us about Project RAMP.
Okay, I'm not able to start my video, but I believe you can see the slides, so maybe we'll start there. So thanks for having me again, and for bearing with me. Okay, just one moment. Okay, I think we're good now. Thanks, Gabby. All right, so I am here to talk about Project RAMP, which many of you may have heard much about over the last year or so, but for those who aren't familiar, Project RAMP, or the Records Assessment and Migration Project, was the name of the project for migrating SpotDocs to move off of the Confluence software, which we had used for almost 20 years, and to lead the efforts to find a new home an open source and sort of on-premise hosted option for all of the wonderful content that's produced by OCL Scholars Portal and the various teams and groups that collaborate together, creating documentation, sharing resources and information on our organizational wiki. So it was a big project. We started it in November of 2022, and the goal that we were working towards was to have the new SpotDocs platform selected, customized, set up, all the content migrated over and ready to welcome our users by February of this year. And that was to coincide with the end of support for our existing Confluence license. So we will get to the timeline, but I am pleased to say that we were able to make that target, spoiler alert, as you are probably familiar as you're on the site right now. But okay, so just to go through a couple of the key pieces and how we sort of mapped out this work. The first phase that we started was the discovery phase, and that was really, as the name suggests, focused on information gathering, really to surface when and why OCL and Scholars Portal groups and users are coming to SpotDocs to hear about their experiences with the current software platform, and to really get a deeper sense of the content management landscape within the organization from the perspective of our members and our user communities. As I mentioned, we had been using Confluence for almost 20 years, so this was a really good time to reassess and take stock of all of the content and just sort of how we want to do collaborative documentation moving forward, and the best ways to organize that information so that it's something that our users and our community can find, navigate through, and really just make sure that flow of information is consistent throughout the organization, which is something that Amy also touched on in the OCL updates, and I will be covering in a little bit more detail just in a few slides. But this discovery phase happened started in the winter of 2022 and went into the spring. We looked primarily at three kind of key components: analytics for usage of the current site and sort of trends and user behaviors. We did environmental scans just to see what other consortia were using for collaborative work and different wiki options. We looked at a lot of software platforms for sort of productivity management and collaboration. And then one of the really wonderful parts of this first phase were doing the community consultations. So we did that in, again, another three-pronged approach. We did interviews with our Scholars Portal staff, representing 11 different Scholars Portal services. And then we conducted focus groups for the OCL community, as well as an interview with the OCL, sort of group interview with OCL staff. And there were 6 focus groups that were hosted in April and May, as well as a user survey that went out at the same time, and that was to all SpotDocs users, where we garnered 47 responses that represented 15 of the 21 OCL member institutions, as well as some other non-OCL SpotDocs users as well. So this all gave us a really good sense of how folks feel about SpotDocs, but also information management as well. And then we moved into the development phase. So taking all of that really great information that we gathered in the discovery portion of the project, we then were able to sort of do some testing from the list of different software platforms that we determined could meet our needs, both our functional requirements and the needs identified by our user community. We installed and tested out several different open source wiki candidates. And from that testing, we determined that XWiki was the best candidate to meet our needs and requirements. While we were doing this development, again, as Amy mentioned, there was this really wonderful opportunity to also look at reviewing and cleaning up content on the existing SpotDocs, and there was quite a lot of it. There were over 7,000 pages and 19,000 attachments in SpotDocs that we were working through, and so this was a really great opportunity to think about the sort of workflows and just sort of guidelines and recommendations that we could make that could help do a bit of that cleanup, and also to sort of put systems in place for that work to continue beyond the project. But first, let's talk about the testing of the different wiki candidates and specifically to talk about what interested us in XWiki. So when assessing alternatives to Confluence, we were really looking for software that could meet our community's needs and requirements. Some of them are listed here on this slide. As I mentioned, we were really interested in finding an open source software solution that we could host on premises. This is how a number of Scholars Portal services are hosted before, are hosted currently. And this was also something that Confluence had changed their pricing model just before this project started. So that was also something that we were taking into consideration to find other solutions that would be cost effective for our organization today and then also into the future. Some of the other features that we were looking at, as I mentioned, there's a lot of content. We weren't going to bring all of it over, but having the ability to do some of the automated bulk migration of the content and also the way that the content is structured, having that hierarchical information structure and being able to preserve that as we migrated to the new site was really important. And also to move over our users and in doing so to retain both the version history of pages and also contributions from users, whether they were active or previous user accounts as well. We were also looking for the ability to do granular permissions management to look at options that were in place for multilingual support and internationalization. There's a really nice option to be able to translate pages and to toggle between French and English on pages now, which is something that we were excited to be able to provide. And then also to make sure that there was a demonstrated commitment to accessibility and WCAG standards and to see that these were actively that there were active accessibility improvements being made to the platform. Another requirement was to see that there was, speaking of active and just an active community, and there is quite a lot of that with XWiki. There's different forums, there's Jira that you can post different recommendations or sort of do troubleshooting or support. So we've received a lot of support, which is nice because it is open source. It is open source software, but we've been able to make different recommendations and different requests as well, and to receive feedback in a timely fashion, as well as the ability to make a lot of those customizations and changes ourselves because it is an open source product. So we liked all of those components. And then also taking into account needs identified by our user community, having options to be able to do some task management and also collaborative real-time editing, which is something that we hope to be able to add. It's in beta mode right now with one of the versions of XWiki, so we hope to be able to include that feature very soon for our OCL and Scholars Portal communities. So we also completed a content review. So we created workflows, instructions, and guidelines. We shared that with both OCL and Scholars Portal staff and with OCL groups. So there were lots of instructions for how to do content review and conversations around record management guidelines as well. And then to tackle the OCL spaces, we formed an OCL review team, which was myself, Annika, Ellie, and Katrina over the summer. And through our work together, we were able to develop guidelines for managing governance records. And we also created decision records, which are sort of a spreadsheet that OCL groups would receive that they could then indicate what actions they wanted to be performed on their content. So we tried to make it as streamlined as possible, but also as transparent as possible in how we were approaching what was going to be migrated over, what was sort of legacy or historical information that then would be transferred to an organizational Nextcloud account for longer term storage, and then what on the wiki was not needed anymore, was no longer active, being referenced, or didn't necessarily have that historical value, and that would be something that we leave behind on our previous platform. So we tried to kind of provide those three avenues for where the content could go that made sense based on the type of content and the information that was included. So to also think about ways that we could improve that, sort of making it easier to find and access and navigate through a wiki and find information. We really wanted to promote consistent display of information, so we added some standard pages for the OCL groups and naming conventions that were applied for various records types. And then also created a sort of schedule for which types of governance records were to be migrated and which were to be transferred to Nextcloud, and what that retention schedule and sort of process would look like. So those content management guidelines, as I mentioned, were one of the biggest outputs of the project, aside from the actual migration, which was quite a lot of work too. And these are the content management guidelines, just a few objectives, as I mentioned, just making it easier to find information and also to provide a bit of a framework for records management of digital governance records moving into the future. So one of the nice things about this work is that it's not just tied to the project of migration, but it's also something that will be implemented on an ongoing basis. So we're coming up to the first ever OCL Documentathon, where OCL staff will be moving older materials to Nextcloud using those OCL content management guidelines. So there will also be some biannual content reviews that are going to be organized with OCL groups, and all of this is to make sure that SpotDocs remains the place for current active information, that it's retains its organization and structure, and that we're just sort of integrating those wiki gardening activities into our work together and into the future. The implementation piece, this was after all of that development work, we moved into implementing, and that involved both putting our existing SpotDocs platform Confluence into read-only mode, and then going into migration time. So in this period, we built out our new platform. We prepared some training, documentation, and resources, and then we migrated all of that content that we had worked really hard in that content review process to identify as what needs to go over to the new SpotDocs, and we did that over a 1-week period in mid-February. And so we moved from Confluence, which we see here, and which you'll see a moment in our In Memoriam segment, over to XWiki, and this is the homepage for both of those platforms. So as we built out this new platform, because we had the ability to do a lot of that customization and development ourselves, we really wanted to think about how we could refresh the information architecture and best support our users to find information on the new site. So we simplified the homepage. We added a horizontal navigation bar that groups different areas under Scholars Portal, OCL. There's a new SpotDocs help section as well. There you'll find getting started guides, accessible content creation guides. There are avenues to request an account, to provide feedback. There's information about upcoming drop-in sessions, which we host on a bi-weekly basis for anyone that wants to pop in. And if you have a question or you want to know, is it possible, can I do this thing here? Or I'm having trouble with this, that's just a very open 1-hour virtual drop-in forum to come and ask those questions. And we wanted to provide all of this guidance on an ongoing basis because we know that new users are joining throughout the year. And so it's really important to have that sort of static area that anyone can come who's starting out with SpotDocs, or perhaps being onboarded into a new role, such as a chair role with one of the OCL groups, that those resources are available and upfront for everyone. We also were able to add a little bit more custom theming, that we kept the branding that distinguished between Scholars Portal and OCL areas of the wiki. So you'll notice that change from blue to green, and different logos as well as you move throughout the area. And then we also wanted to add a little bit more of bring a little bit more of the personalization up to the front. So we added a My Favorites panel that allows bookmarking of pages, and that now displays on the right side from wherever you are in SpotDocs, and again, provides that more personalized navigation experience. And just a quick wrap up of the cleanup that I mentioned doing. So when we moved over to our new platform, we didn't take everything. So we were able to make some pretty significant dents in doing that content cleanup. And this is not to say that everything was left behind, but it was also in certain cases transferred to organizational Nextcloud instances for Scholars Portal and OCL. And I wanted to commend the OCL team because they've done a fantastic job of setting up this incredible file structure and naming conventions and all of this guidance for the sort of record management piece of this project, which is happening both on the wiki and in Nextcloud as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who contributed to this project, who provided all of the wonderful feedback and insights. It was super helpful as I was leading the project to work together. And also, I hope that the outcome of this is that we have a platform that we have all contributed to how it looks and how it's designed, and that we continue to actively work together to make sure that it continues to be a place that we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, a comment in the chat. Amazing work, a huge accomplishment. The new Spot Docs looks great. Lots of love for all the work from the migration in the chat. And yes, you did a fantastic job. And it was such a massive project, and you did wonderfully. So thank you and congratulations. And thank you for talking about it with us here today.
Thanks for letting me talk about it again. I know.
I love hearing about it. I always love to hear about it. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now, but if anyone does have any questions, if you want to drop them in there, and maybe Julia can answer them with the type answer option. We are going to move forward with to start wrapping up for today. So we're going to have some closing comments in a few minutes, but after such a lovely presentation from Julia about Spot Docs and the move from Confluence, it would be a bit remiss if we did not take a moment to reflect on the golden days of Confluence and a few of the other services or pieces of services that we have said goodbye to or are in the midst of saying goodbye to. As Kate talked about a little bit in her opening remarks today, we are saying goodbye to Racer as well. Racer is sunsetting, and we've talked quite a bit about the Odyssey migration in the past year or so as well. And with the Odyssey migration and Odyssey now fully integrated with Borealis, we have officially shut down the old Nestar backend. So we do have a brief sort of memorial video to share with you all today, to take a moment to reflect on the joy and perhaps some of the quirks that Nestar, Confluence, and Racer have brought to us all over the years. So we will share that with you. Yes, indeed, there will be some mournful music, and you know, shed a tear if you so desire. And I'm going to share my screen and sound. Hopefully it will work on the first try, or it's going to or may not have quite the same impact. So bear with me for a moment. Okay, let's give this a try.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the grace that placed itself where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everyone had a little moment there. And I think Sabina put in the chat a link to a form where we're collecting some goodbye messages to Racer and suggestions for an incredible farewell playlist. So if you do have any fond memories for Racer specifically, please do add them there. And as a little sneak peek, we will be including a tribute to Racer, a farewell tribute to Racer in the upcoming May newsletter. Thank you to Confluence, Nestar, and Racer for all that they have done for us. And as we close out today, I'm going to pass it over to Lynn Service and Andrew Colgoni to deliver some closing remarks for us. And I also want to take a moment to thank them as members and chairs of OCLSP and for their help on the planning committee for Scholars Portal Days this year. So over to you two.
Thanks, Gabby. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Colgoni.
And I'm Lynn Service, and together we are the chairs of OCL Scholars Portal Committee. Unfortunately, we don't have any music to play in the background of our brief closing remarks, but maybe you can sing something or hum something, Andrew.
I think I'll pass. Thanks, Lynn.
Pass on that? Okay. This year's theme, Collaborative Intelligence, aimed to bridge together the technological cutting edge with the human-centered power of collaboration. Both technology and collaboration have long been areas that Scholars Portal has excelled at. Day one kicked off with Catherine Davidson, the chair of the Scholars Portal Operations and Development Committee, setting the stage for the next 2 days as a space for this community to share our creative ideas and learn about our innovative services and programs. Our keynote panel then focused on how AI requires active engagement, especially within our profession. And Meta Williams asked us to think about the notion of intelligence and how it works to make meaning in our world and within our cultures. We also learned about the positive way AI tools can be used to help better understand the world around us. We talked a lot about birdwatching apps, which I think we can all agree we should download the Merlin app. I believe it was the Merlin app that was suggested onto our phones for some springtime birdwatching. Dr. Grossman then spoke about how AI is ultimately a tool, like electricity or a hammer, neither inherently good nor bad in themselves, but everything boils down to how we use it. She described projects she has worked on that leveraged machine learning for useful, practical purposes, highlighting systematic reviews. And finally, Dr. Grossman left us asking what we are planning on doing to counter the threat of deepfakes in our profession. Catherine Steeves then shared the work of OCL as it relates to AI and machine learning, including core principles and how we should develop projects in this area, and noting the need for project management and capacity building. A number of proposed use cases were shared, including accessibility and virtual reference. The interim report from the OCL AI Machine Learning Task Force is available on the OCL website for you to read. In the first round of lightning talks on day one covered practical applications of AI and machine learning that can be used in our everyday workflows, examples of automating metadata generation and curation, as well as intelligent handwriting transcriptions were shared. In the second round of lightning talks, we learned about different possibilities of using locally run and managed large language models, and then we were shown how AI can help us bridge the human with the digital. And finally, we were left contemplating if our AI tools were tricksters or not. And over to you, Andrew, for a wrap up of day two.
I should unmute before I start talking. Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, today we leaned much heavier into the collaborative side of collaborative intelligence with many Scholars Portal services being highlighted. So we started with digital preservation and a focus on OLRC, Ontario Library Research Cloud, and how it supports its members. We heard about the tape backup pilot service, bringing back that classic form of storage, which really reminds me of the old Commodore 64. I don't know if any of you had one of those where you would load the games from tape. Permafrost gained a few new members, bringing the total to now 17, including 2 from Alberta, we learned. GeoPortal talked about a new project working group to implement a migration and redevelopment project, which will see the development of streamlined, faster, and more efficient back-end system, as well as a new front end. And we heard about the portal getting 10,000 new maps, which will expand our Canadian coverage significantly, which is a really cool thing to learn about. We learned a little bit too about the institutional repository, shared institutional repository model, which has been kicking around for a little while and actually bubbled up from conversations that we were having at OCL SP. And that was proceeding, and those conversations were also happening at CARL at the same time. We learned a little bit about the benefits to us, right? So partnering nationally will give us greater consistency, especially in look and feel and use, and preservation benefits. And the vision of Scolaris is a repository service that will allow institutions to maintain their unique branded institutional repositories while benefiting from all those benefits of a shared model. So it's currently in the early adopters phase. And I'm really thrilled to hear that we've already got 2 cohorts full, ready to go. And the big reveal of the purple geodesic dome-like logo. That was very exciting. The lightning talks, we were quite varied, right? We learned about the Bell Park project, which has been looking into wetland boundaries, how they've been changing in Kingston, and really the critical importance that our kinds of repositories play in historic geospatial information. We learned about ORCID from Waterloo. Their implementation pilot project will ensure every researcher has a unique identifier, which can then be linked to other systems like their IR, and are a really important part of assessing institutional research impact. From Ask a Librarian, we heard that operators answered around 300,000, mind-boggling to even say, virtual reference chats, and the mutually beneficial relationship between user feedback and the operator, which helps foster a culture of appreciation. The Accessible Content e-portal, or ACE, is described an issue where number of texts, many texts, lack a proper table of contents for a number of reasons. And these are really important for navigation and accessibility. So, we heard a request to all of you to join as editors and use the new table of contents editing tool to help make more contents more functional and user-friendly. From OCL, we welcomed TMU as the 19th Omni partner, and we anticipate welcoming 3 new OCL members, which is wonderful to hear. Amy highlighted the important, and I'm glad it got highlighted, the important bread and butter work that OCL has in supporting consortial licensing agreements, currently over 200. And then we learned about the relaunching of new communications and awards, and key updates to governance, including committee terms of reference. That includes the OCL SP committee. Moving on to the ACE assessment project, this is a really important work, as I said in the chat. It's a template for, not only is it important for ACE, it's also a template for future service assessment work at Scholars Portal. So really critical. And that project generates a number of recommendations that are going to help improve this valuable service that, And Project RAMP migrated our Spot Docs documentation from Confluence to XWiki, and that will improve our information architecture and content management going forward. And of course, we just shed a single tear, saying goodbye to some beloved systems, racing off into the sunset. As with every year, I am continually astounded by the new projects and service improvements that happen at Scholars Portal and OCL. So as we bring Scholars Portal Days 2024 to a close, we want to express our gratitude to all of you who have joined us, hundreds of registrants from Ontario and across Canada, and to our many speakers and panelists who have shared their expertise and ideas over the past 2 days. Thank you, thank you. We also want to acknowledge the Scholars Portal Day Organizing Committee for their work in pulling these days together. Gabby Crowley, Client Services Librarian, Scholars Portal, Sabina Pagato, Assessment and Member Engagement Librarian at Scholars Portal, Katrina Fortner, Administration and Communications Coordinator at OCL, Ravit David, Distinctive Collections Librarian at Scholars Portal, Allison Hitchens, Associate University Librarian at University of Waterloo, and Karen Pilon, Associate University Librarian, University of Windsor. Please join us in giving them a virtual round of applause. And with that, we will say goodbye to all of you and thank you again And hopefully we'll see you at next year's Scholars Portal Days.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for coming. It was wonderful to see you all here. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.